the elusive I. At the very heart of your universe, there is a single constant point of reference, the feeling of being I. It is the silent, ever-present witness to your entire life. It is the I that feels joy and sadness, the I that remembers yesterday and plans for tomorrow, the I that is having this very thought right now. This sense of a unified, enduring, and continuous self is the most fundamental feature of our conscious existence. It feels solid, real, and self-evident. Yet, when we try to grasp this I, when we try to pin it down with the tools of philosophy, psychology, and neuroscience, it becomes strangely elusive, like a phantom that disappears the moment you shine a light directly on it. The quest to understand the nature of the self is the ultimate philosophical mystery, a profound mind fuck that questions the very foundation of our identity. Is this I a real, persistent entity, or is it a grand illusion created by the intricate workings of our brain and memory? This is the central question of our journey tonight. Over the next 3 hours, we will embark on a deep, contemplative exploration of this elusive I. We will journey through the great historical and contemporary attempts to answer this fundamental question. We will begin by exploring the classic philosophical theories of personal identity. We will contemplate the ancient idea of the soul theory, the belief that our true self is an immaterial, unchanging soul that inhabits our physical body. We will then examine the more grounded body theory, which argues that our identity is tied to the simple, biological continuity of our physical organism. From there, we will delve into the profound puzzle of change, using the classic thought experiment of the ship of Theseus as our guide. How can something remain the same if all of its parts are replaced? This will lead us directly into the most influential modern theory, Locke's psychological criterion, which locates our identity not in a soul or a body, but in the continuity of our consciousness and memory. But this too will lead us into deep and troubling waters. We will confront the problem of amnesia and the profound malleability of memory itself, questioning whether such a fragile and reconstructive process can truly be the bedrock of our identity. We will then journey into even more radical territory, exploring David Hume's bundle theory, the startling idea that there is no underlying self at all, only a fleeting collection of perceptions. We will consider the narrative theory of self, which proposes that we are not a thing, but a story, an ever-evolving narrative that we construct about our lives. Having explored the philosophical landscape, we will turn to the science of the self. We will look for the I in the neurological architecture of the brain, and we will see what the strange and fascinating cases of split-brain patients can tell us about the unity of consciousness. We will explore the psychological models of the self, from Freud's concept of the ego as a mediator of inner conflict, to Jung's vision of the public persona and the hidden shadow. We will also examine the socially constructed self, the idea that who we are is profoundly shaped by how others see us. In our final hour, we will push the boundaries of the concept of self into the future and into the mystical. We will confront the terrifying paradox of Parfit's teleporter problem, which forces us to ask what survival truly means. We will explore the profound insights from Buddhism and modern neuroscience that point towards the illusion of a unitary self. We will question the very boundary between our mind and the world with the extended mind hypothesis. We will look at the future of the self in an age of AI and mind uploading, and we will explore the profound experiences of egolessness found in mystical states and moments of flow. The mind fuck at the heart of this entire exploration is the steady erosion of our simple common-sense belief in a solid, stable, and unchanging I. Each theory, each thought experiment, each scientific discovery seems to chip away at this foundation, revealing that the self is far more complex, more fluid, and perhaps more illusory than we could ever imagine. The journey is one of deconstruction, of letting go of our most cherished and fundamental assumption, that we know who we are. This exploration is not intended to create anxiety or a sense of existential dread. On the contrary, it is an invitation to a different kind of peace. By understanding the elusive and constructed nature of the self, we can learn to hold our own identity more lightly. We can become less attached to a rigid self-image, more open to change and growth, and more compassionate with our own inconsistencies and failings. It is a path to a more profound and more authentic form of self-knowledge, a knowledge that is grounded in mystery rather than in certainty. As you begin to fall asleep, allow your own sense of to soften at the edges. Acknowledge the powerful, persistent feeling of being a single, continuous self, and at the same time hold the gentle possibility that this feeling is a profound mystery, a beautiful and complex creation of your mind. You do not need to solve the puzzle of your own identity. For tonight, simply allow yourself to be the witness to the mystery. Find deep relaxation in letting go of the need to be a fixed, solid thing, and instead rest in the fluid, dynamic, and endlessly fascinating process of your own being, a process we call the self. The soul theory of identity. Let us begin our search for the elusive I, with the most ancient, most intuitive, and most widely held theory of personal identity in human history. This is the soul theory of identity. In its various forms, this theory proposes that what makes you the same person over time is the persistence of a single, unique, and immaterial soul. This soul is seen as the true essence of your being, the core of your consciousness, your personality, and your moral character. Your body may change, it may grow, age, and eventually decay, but your soul in this view remains the same, an unchanging substance that either inhabits or is intimately connected to your physical form. This idea is the bedrock of many of the world's religions and spiritual traditions, offering a powerful answer to the puzzle of identity and the promise of survival beyond death. It is a profound and deeply comforting concept, yet it is also a deep philosophy mystery, one that raises as many questions as it answers. Let us gently and respectfully explore the logic, the appeal, and the challenges of this ancient theory as you fall asleep. The appeal of the soul theory is immense. It provides a simple and powerful solution to the problem of identity through change. How can you be the same person you were as a child, even though your body and mind have changed so dramatically? The soul theory answers, because you possess the same identical soul. This provides a bedrock of absolute, unchanging identity that is immune to the ravages of time and the flux of physical existence. It aligns perfectly with our powerful intuition that there is a real me, a stable core of being that persists through all the changes of our lives. Furthermore, the soul theory provides a straightforward foundation for our most important moral and religious beliefs. It gives us a basis for personal responsibility. The reason you can be held accountable today for an action you committed years ago is because you are the same person, the same soul, who performed that action. It also provides the very mechanism for an afterlife. If your true self is an immaterial soul, then the death of your physical body is not the end of your existence. Your soul, being non-physical, can survive the body's demise and continue on in another realm, a heaven, a hell, or another incarnation. This answers our deep human fear of annihilation and provides a framework for ultimate justice and meaning. The classic philosophical formulation of this view comes from René Descartes, who argued for a radical substance dualism. He proposed that reality is composed of two fundamentally different kinds of stuff: physical substance, residential extensa, which is extended in space and governed by the laws of physics, and mental substance, residential cogitans, which is unextended, non-physical, and is the stuff of thought and consciousness. For Descartes, the human person was a composite of these two substances, a physical body and a non-physical mind or soul. Our identity, our I, was to be found in this thinking substance, not in the mechanical body it inhabited. This picture feels deeply intuitive to many. It resonates with the feeling that our minds, our consciousness, are somehow different from and more than just the meat of our brains. It captures the sense that we are pilots in our bodies looking out at the world through the windows of our senses. However, despite its immense intuitive and emotional appeal, the soul theory of identity faces a number of profound philosophical and scientific challenges. The first is the problem of evidence. The existence of a non-physical soul is, by its very nature, something that cannot be empirically proven or disproven by the methods of science. Science studies the physical world. A soul, being non-physical, lies outside its domain. Belief in a soul is therefore a matter of faith or philosophical argument, not scientific fact. As science has become increasingly successful at explaining the workings of the world, including the workings of the mind through physical processes, the need to posit a separate, non-physical entity has, for many thinkers, diminished. The second major challenge is the problem of interaction, which Descartes himself struggled with. If the mind or soul is a non-physical substance, and the body and brain are a physical substance, how do they interact? How can a non-physical thought, I want to raise my arm, cause a physical event, the firing of neurons that makes the arm move? How can a physical event, a stubbed toe, cause a non-physical experience, the feeling of pain? The point of connection between the immaterial and the material seems to violate the causal closure of the physical world, the principle that all physical events have physical causes. This interaction remains a deep and unresolved mystery for any substance dualist view. The third challenge is the problem of individuation and identity. What makes one soul different from another? If souls are non-physical and have no extension in space, what is it that makes your soul and my soul my soul? And how do we know that we have the same soul throughout our lives? The only way we seem to be able to track our own identity is through the continuity of our body and our psychological states, like memory. But if identity is truly based on the soul, we would have no way of knowing if our soul wasn't, for example, swapped out for a different but very similar soul every night while we sleep. The continuity of the soul, the very thing that is supposed to guarantee our identity, seems to be something we can never directly verify. We must simply assume it. The mind fuck of the soul theory is this deep tension between its powerful intuitive appeal and its profound philosophical difficulties. It offers a simple and comforting answer to the puzzle of the self, but it does so by positing a mysterious, unprovable entity that creates a host of new, and perhaps even more difficult, problems. It questions whether our deepest intuitions about ourselves can be translated into a logically coherent and scientifically plausible theory. As you continue to fall asleep, allow your mind to gently hold the ancient and powerful idea of the soul. Picture it as a single, unchanging spark of light, the core of your being, that has persisted throughout your entire life. Feel the sense of comfort, of stability, and of permanence that this idea can bring. Acknowledge its deep resonance with your own intuitive feeling of being a continuous I. Now, with the same gentle awareness, also hold the profound philosophical questions it raises. The mystery of its existence, the puzzle of its interaction with the body. You do not need to solve this ancient debate tonight. Find deep relaxation in simply contemplating the concept. See it as a beautiful and powerful metaphor for the enduring and mysterious nature of your own consciousness, whether it is a separate substance or an emergent property of your complex brain. Resting peacefully, in quiet communion with the deep and timeless mystery of your own inner essence. The body theory of identity, animalism. Having contemplated the ancient, ethereal idea of the immaterial soul as the seat of our identity, let us now return to the firm, tangible ground of our physical existence. Let us explore a different and, in many ways, more modern and scientifically grounded perspective on the nature of the self. This is the body theory of identity, sometimes known in philosophy as animalism. This view proposes that what makes you the same person over time is not the persistence of an immaterial soul, nor the continuity of your psychological states, but simply the continuous existence of your physical, biological organism. You are, in essence, a human animal, and your identity persists as long as that animal's life continues. This theory is powerful in its simplicity and its alignment with a modern, scientific worldview, yet it also leads to its own set of profound and counterintuitive paradoxes. It is a mind fuck that questions our cherished belief that we are our minds, suggesting instead that we are, fundamentally, our bodies. Contemplating this deeply embodied view of the self can be a source of profound, grounding relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin by appreciating the straightforward appeal of the body theory. It provides a clear, objective, and publicly observable criterion for personal identity. How do we identify a person from one day to the next? We look at their body. The continuity of their physical form is our primary common-sense guide to their identity. The theory takes this common-sense practice and elevates it to a philosophical principle. It solves many of the problems that plague the soul theory. There is no mysterious, unobservable entity. There is no difficult problem of interaction between the mental and the physical. The mental is simply a process of the physical organism. And the problem of individuation is solved. What makes you you and me is the simple fact that we are two distinct, spatially separate biological organisms. The core claim of animalism is that you and your body, in the sense of the living organism, are one and the same thing. The thing that is currently listening to this voice is a human animal. The thing that was born with your name was that same human animal, just at an earlier stage of its life. And the thing that will cease to exist when your biological life ends is that same human animal. Your persistence conditions are the same as those of any other biological organism. You continue to exist as long as your life-sustaining biological processes, like metabolism and respiration, continue in an unbroken chain. This view elegantly handles many of the challenges that face memory-based theories. For example, it has no problem with amnesia. If you were to suffer a profound memory loss, you would still be the very same person, the same human animal, as you were before, even if you had no psychological connection to your past. The theory also handles periods of unconsciousness, like deep sleep or a coma, without any difficulty. You do not cease to exist when you are in a dreamless sleep, because your biological organism continues its life. This aligns with our strong intuition that we are the same person who went to sleep last night, even if there is a complete gap in our conscious experience. However, the body theory of identity leads to its own set of deeply strange and counterintuitive conclusions, its own profound mind fucks. The most significant of these is its apparent downgrading of the importance of the mind and consciousness. We have a powerful intuition that our mind, our memories, our personality, are what is most essential to who we are. The body theory questions this. It implies that your identity resides in your entire living organism, not just your brain. This leads to some bizarre thought experiments. Consider the possibility of a brain transplant. Imagine your brain is transplanted into a different body. According to the body theory, the resulting person with your brain and a new body is not you. You are the original, now brainless but still biologically living body that was left behind. The person who wakes up with all your memories, your personality, and your feeling of being you is, according to this theory, a new person who has just come into existence, inheriting the brain of the now deceased, or at least no longer conscious, person you. This violently contradicts the intuition of most people, who would say that their identity goes with their brain, with their mind. The theory also has strange implications for the beginning and end of life. It implies that you came into existence not when you first became conscious or self-aware, but when you first came into existence as a distinct biological organism, perhaps as a fetus or even an embryo. And it implies that you would continue to exist even if you were to fall into a permanent, irreversible vegetative state, as long as your biological life was being sustained. This means that personhood, in the psychological sense, a conscious, thinking being, and personal identity, the persistence of the same individual, can come apart. You could exist as the same animal without being a person. This is the central challenge for the body theory. It seems to capture our identity as a biological specimen, but it struggles to capture our identity as a psychological self. It answers the question, what am I? With a human animal, but our deepest intuition is that we are a person, a mind, a consciousness. The psychology mystery is why this disconnect between our biological identity and our psychological identity is so profound. Are we wrong to place so much emphasis on our minds? Or is the body theory, despite its simplicity and scientific grounding, missing something essential about the nature of the self? The debate between the body theory and the psychological continuity theory is one of the central debates in the philosophy of personal identity. It is a clash between two powerful intuitions: the intuition that we are our bodies and the intuition that we are our minds. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the physical reality of your own body. Feel its weight, its warmth, the gentle, automatic rhythm of your breath. Acknowledge this body as the vessel of your existence, the continuous, living organism that has carried you through your entire life. Contemplate the simple, powerful idea that you are this body, that your identity is one and the same as the life of this animal. Feel the grounding, the solidity of this perspective. Now, with the same gentle awareness, acknowledge the counterintuition. The feeling that you are the consciousness inside the body, the pilot of the vessel. Let these two powerful ideas, the self as body and the self as mind, coexist in your awareness. You do not need to choose between them. Find deep relaxation in the profound mystery of your own embodied nature. Resting peacefully, feeling yourself as a single, unified, and deeply mysterious being of both body and mind. The ship of Theseus paradox. Having contemplated the competing claims of the immaterial soul and the biological body as the seat of our identity, let us now journey to the heart of the underlying problem that both theories attempt to solve. We will explore one of the most ancient, elegant, and enduring thought experiments in all of philosophy, the ship of Theseus paradox. This classic puzzle forces us to confront the profound mystery of identity through change. How can anything, be it an object, an institution, or a person, remain this same thing over time if all of its constituent parts are gradually replaced? At what point does a thing cease to be itself and become something new? The paradox of the ship is a deep mind fuck that questions our very concepts of sameness, persistence, and identity, revealing that our common sense understanding of what makes a thing itself is built upon surprisingly fragile and contradictory foundations. Contemplating this ancient puzzle is a pathway to a more fluid and nuanced understanding of your own ever-changing self, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. The The story, as recounted by the ancient Greek historian Plutarch, is simple. The famous ship sailed by the legendary hero Theseus was preserved for centuries by the people of Athens as a memorial. As the old wooden planks began to rot, they were gradually replaced, one by one, with new, identical planks of wood, until a point was reached where not a single one of the original planks remained. This raises the first question. Is this fully restored ship still the same ship as the one Theseus sailed? Our intuition is pulled in two directions. On one hand, we feel it is the same ship. It has occupied a continuous path through space and time, it has always been called the ship of Theseus, and it has maintained the same overall form and function. This appeals to a sense of historical and functional continuity. On the other hand, we feel it is not the same ship. It no longer shares any physical matter with the original. It is composed of entirely new material. This appeals to our intuition that identity is tied to the physical substance of a thing. Now, the paradox deepens with a famous addition to the story. What if some enterprising individual had gathered up all the old, discarded planks as they were being replaced, and had carefully reassembled them in a different location? We are now faced with two ships. Ship A is the one in the harbor, fully restored with new planks, which has the continuous history. Ship B is the reassembled one, which is made of all the original, authentic matter. Which of these two, if either, is the true ship of Theseus? This is the paradox. If you say ship A is the real one, you are prioritizing historical continuity and form over material substance. But then you must explain why ship B, which is materially identical to the original, has lost its claim to identity. If you say ship B is the real one, you are prioritizing material substance over continuity. But then you must accept that the real ship of Theseus was, for a time, a scattered pile of rotting wood, and the ship in the harbor, which everyone called the ship of Theseus, was actually an impostor all along. And what if only half the planks were replaced? When precisely did the identity switch? After the first plank was replaced? The 500th? The last? Any line we try to draw seems arbitrary. The ship of Theseus paradox is a profound mindfuck because it reveals that our common-sense concept of identity is not a single coherent idea, but a bundle of different and often conflicting criteria. We seem to believe that identity is tied to 1. The continuity of the object's material substance. 2. The continuity of its form and structure. 3. The continuity of its history and location. 4. The continuity of its name and social function. In our everyday lives, for most objects, these criteria all align. The paradox is a carefully constructed scenario where these criteria are deliberately pulled apart, forcing us to choose which one is most fundamental, and revealing that we have no consistent way to do so. This is not just a puzzle about old ships. It is a profound metaphor for the nature of the self. You, yourself, are a biological ship of Theseus. The vast majority of the atoms and cells that make up your body today are not the same ones that made up your body 7 years ago. Your physical substance is in a constant state of flux. Your mental planks, your beliefs, your desires, your memories, your personality traits are also in constant flux. You have changed profoundly since you were a child. Yet you feel you are the same person. So, what accounts for your persistence through this constant change? Are you your continuous physical body, like ship A's continuous existence? Are you your original stuff, an idea that seems impossible for a biological being? Or is your identity found somewhere else entirely? The paradox beautifully sets the stage for the psychological theories of identity, which we will explore next. These theories propose that for a person, the most important criterion is not the continuity of the physical ship, but the continuity of the captain, or the ship's log, the continuity of consciousness and memory. The mystery of the paradox is that it has no single accepted solution. It is a tool for clarifying our thinking, not for arriving at a final answer. It teaches us that sameness is not a simple objective fact of the world, but a complex concept that depends on what we choose to focus on. Perhaps the question, which is the real ship, is the wrong question. Perhaps identity is not an all-or-nothing property, but a matter of degree. Perhaps both ships have some claim to the title, and our language, which prefers simple, binary answers, is simply not equipped to handle such complex situations. As you continue to fall asleep, allow the image of the two ships of Theseus to float gently in your mind, the restored ship in the harbor and the reassembled ship in the warehouse. Feel the pull of your intuition towards each one. Acknowledge the logical knot, the impossibility of making a single, perfectly satisfying choice. Let this paradox gently dissolve any rigid ideas you have about identity and sameness. See the world, and perhaps even yourself, not as a collection of static, unchanging objects, but as a fluid, dynamic process, a flow of matter and form through time. Find deep relaxation in this more fluid and flexible view of existence, resting peacefully, floating calmly in the gentle, paradoxical river of change that is the very nature of reality. Locke's psychological criterion. Having been set adrift on the paradoxical sea of the ship of Theseus, questioning how any object can maintain its identity through constant physical change, we now turn to one of the most powerful and influential answers to this puzzle when applied to the nature of the self. We will explore Locke's psychological criterion of personal identity. The 17th century philosopher John Locke proposed a revolutionary idea. Our identity as a person does not reside in an unchanging soul or a continuous body, but in the continuity of our consciousness, specifically our memory. You are the same person you were in the past to the extent that you can consciously remember that past person's thoughts and experiences from a first-person perspective. The self, for Locke, is a psychological entity, a stream of consciousness that is sewn together by the thread of memory. This is a profound mind fuck that detaches identity from substance and places it squarely in the realm of our subjective mental life. It is a secret of the self that both resonates deeply with our intuition and opens up a host of new and perplexing paradoxes. Contemplating this memory-based self can be a source of deep, introspective relaxation as you fall asleep. Locke began his inquiry by making a crucial distinction between being the same man, or human being, and being the same person. For Locke, being the same man is a matter of the continuity of the living biological organism, a view very similar to the body theory we have already explored. But he argued that this is not what we are truly interested in when we talk about personal identity. We are interested in the person, which he defined as a thinking intelligent being that has reason and reflection, and can consider itself as itself, the same thinking thing in different times and places. A person, for Locke, is a center of consciousness, a being with a sense of self. So, what makes this self the same self over time? Locke's answer was revolutionary: consciousness. Specifically, the ability of our present consciousness to extend backwards and connect with past thoughts and actions through memory. You are the same person who performed an action yesterday because you, in this present moment, are consciously aware of having performed that action. Your memory provides a direct, first-person link that binds your past and present selves together into a single, continuous person. He wrote, as far as this consciousness can be extended backwards to any past action or thought, so far reaches the identity of that person. This psychological criterion has an immense intuitive appeal. It seems to capture what we truly care about when we think about our own survival and identity. We want our consciousness, our memories, our personality to continue. If your memories and consciousness were to be transferred to a new body, most of us would feel that we have moved to the new body. Locke's theory affirms this powerful intuition. You go where your consciousness goes. It also provides a powerful foundation for moral responsibility. You are justly held accountable for your past actions, Locke would argue, because you are the same consciousness that performed them. If you cannot remember performing an action at all, the question of whether you are truly the same person who did it becomes philosophically problematic. The mind fuck of Locke's theory is its radical decoupling of the person from any particular substance, whether physical or spiritual. The self is not a thing but a process, a continuity of consciousness. It could, in theory, be transferred from one body to another, or even exist without a body, as long as the chain of memory and consciousness remained unbroken. This opened the door to many of the speculative thought experiments, like mind uploading and the teleporter problem, that continue to challenge us today. It suggests that your identity is not your body, but the software of your mind running on the hardware of your brain. However, Locke's theory, while elegant and influential, faces a series of profound and difficult objections, many of which were pointed out by later philosophers like Thomas Reid and Joseph Butler. These problems reveal the deep mysteries and paradoxes that lurk within the seemingly simple idea of a memory-based self. The first and most obvious is the problem of amnesia, which we will explore in our next segment. If identity is constituted by memory, what happens when we forget? If you have no memory of a certain period of your childhood, does that mean you are not the same person as that child? This seems like a deeply counterintuitive conclusion. We feel that we are the child in our old photographs, even if we can't remember the specific moments those photos were taken. A second major objection is the problem of imperfect and false memories. Our memories, as we know, are not perfect recordings. They are fallible, reconstructive, and sometimes completely false. If your identity is based on memory and your memories can be inaccurate, does that mean your identity itself is based on a fiction? What if two people had the exact same false memory of being a historical figure like Cleopatra? According to a strict Lockean view, would they both be Cleopatra? This seems absurd. A third and very powerful objection is the brave officer or transitivity paradox, proposed by Thomas Reid. It goes like this. Imagine a brave officer who, as a young boy, was once flogged for stealing from an orchard. Later in life, as a middle-aged officer, he remembers being the boy who was flogged. So, by Locke's criterion, the officer is the same person as the boy. Later still, as an old, retired general, he remembers his exploits as the brave officer, so he is the same person as the officer. However, in his old age, he has completely forgotten the flogging incident from his boyhood. So, according to Locke's criterion, the old general is not the same person as the boy who was flogged, because he has no direct memory of it. But this leads to a logical contradiction. If the general equals the officer and the officer equals the boy, then logic dictates that the general must equals the boy. Locke's theory violates this basic logical principle of transitivity of identity. This paradox suggests that direct, conscious memory might be too strict a criterion for personal identity. Modern philosophers have tried to refine Locke's theory to overcome these objections. They often speak of psychological continuity rather than just memory, including not just direct memories but also overlapping chains of psychological connections, such as intentions, beliefs, and personality traits. The old general is connected to the boy not by a direct memory, but by an overlapping chain of memories. The general remembers the officer, and the officer remembers the boy. This chain of custody for consciousness helps to solve the transitivity problem. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the stream of your own consciousness. Feel the connection to your memories, the thoughts and experiences that make up the story of your life. Contemplate Locke's profound and powerful idea that this very stream, this continuity of consciousness and memory, is the essence of you. It is the thread that stitches your past and present selves together. Acknowledge the deep intuitive rightness of this idea, the feeling that you are your mind. Now, with the same gentle awareness, hold the paradoxes it creates. The problem of forgetting, the problem of false memories, the breaks in the chain. Find deep relaxation in this complex and fascinating puzzle. Let go of the need for a simple, perfect definition of yourself, and instead appreciate the profound mystery of how your own unique stream of consciousness creates a sense of a single, enduring identity through the vast expanse of time, resting peacefully, floating calmly on the gentle, ever-flowing river of your own awareness. The problem of amnesia. We have just explored John Locke's powerful idea that our identity is constituted by the continuity of our consciousness and memory. This psychological criterion feels deeply intuitive, placing our mental life at the very center of who we are. But it immediately leads us to a stark and profoundly unsettling question, a real-world scenario and a philosophical thought experiment that strikes at the very heart of this theory. This is the problem of amnesia. If you lose your memory, are you still you? If the thread of memory that stitches your past and present selves together is catastrophically severed, does the person you were cease to exist? Is a new person born in that moment, inhabiting your body but with no connection to your past? The problem of amnesia is a deep psychology mystery and a powerful mind fuck that questions the very foundation of memory-based theories of the self, forcing us to confront the terrifying possibility that our identity is as fragile as our ability to remember. Contemplating this potential rupture in the self can be a source of profound gratitude for our own memories and a state of deep relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin by distinguishing between different types of amnesia. The most common type we see in fiction is retrograde amnesia, the loss of memories from before an injury or a traumatic event. This is the classic amnesiac hero who wakes up with no knowledge of their past, their name, their relationships, or their identity. Anterograde amnesia is, in some ways, even more profound. This is the inability to form new long-term episodic memories after an injury. The individual can remember their life up to the point of the injury, but they are trapped in a perpetual present, unable to create new memories of their experiences. The famous case of patient H.M. Henry Molaison provided a tragic real-world example of this state. Let's focus on a hypothetical case of complete and irreversible retrograde amnesia. A person named John suffers a brain injury. When he wakes up, all of his autobiographical memories are gone. He has no recollection of his childhood, his career, his family, his friends, his accomplishments, or his mistakes. He has procedural memory, he still knows how to speak, how to walk, and he has semantic memory, he knows what a car is, he knows who the president is, but he has no episodic memory, no personal story. Now, according to a strict Lockean memory-based theory of identity, is the person who wakes up in that hospital bed the same person as John? The theory seems to force us to say, no. If personal identity consists in the continuity of consciousness and memory, and that continuity has been completely and permanently broken, then the person who existed before the accident, John, has ceased to exist. A new person with a new stream of consciousness that begins in this moment has come into being. This new person inhabits John's body, and John's friends and family will still call him John, but philosophically, he is a different self. This conclusion is profoundly counterintuitive and deeply unsettling to most of us. We have a strong intuition that the person in the hospital bed is still John. This is where the body theory of identity, animalism, finds its strength. For the body theorist, the answer is simple. The living human organism that was John before the accident is the same living human organism after the accident, so of course he is still the same person. The loss of memory is a tragic psychological change, but it does not cause the person to cease to exist. Our legal and social practices align with this view. We would not declare the amnesiac legally dead or allow their spouse to remarry. We treat them as the same individual who has suffered a terrible injury. The mind fuck of the problem of amnesia is this direct and powerful clash between the two leading theories of personal identity. It creates a stark choice. Either we must accept that our identity is tied to our animal body, which means our self could continue to exist in a permanent vegetative state, a conclusion many find unappealing, or we must bite the bullet and accept the radical conclusion of the psychological theory, that a complete loss of memory is, in a profound philosophical sense, a form of death. It is the death of the person even if the body lives on. This psychology mystery forces us to refine our understanding of what we truly value about ourselves and our survival. Is it the mere continuation of our biological life? Or is it the continuation of our psychological life, our story, our memories, our connections? The paradox suggests that these two things, which are normally bound together, can in principle come apart, and we have no easy, universally agreed upon answer for where our self would reside in such a case. As we discussed earlier, modern psychological theorists have tried to soften this hard conclusion by shifting from a strict memory criterion to a broader, psychological continuity criterion. Perhaps the amnesiac is still connected to their past self not by direct memory, but by other, more subtle psychological threads. Their core personality traits, their character, their emotional dispositions, their ingrained habits, many of these might remain, stored in implicit memory even if explicit memory is gone. If the new person still has the same basic personality and character as the old John, this provides a form of continuity. This allows for a more nuanced view, where identity is not an all-or-nothing affair based on a single memory link, but a matter of degree, a question of how much psychological connection remains. However, this still leaves us with difficult questions. How much change is too much? If a person's personality is also radically altered by the brain injury in addition to their memories, does that make the case for their non-survival stronger? The problem of amnesia is the real-world manifestation of the ship of Theseus paradox, a case where the planks of memory have been catastrophically replaced all at once. As you continue to fall asleep, allow your mind to gently hold this profound and unsettling scenario. Imagine your own vast web of memory, the intricate tapestry of experiences that makes up your life story. Now imagine it completely gone, a blank slate. Would the being that remains still be you? Feel the intuitive pull towards both answers. Yes, of course it's my body, and no, without my memories I am nothing. Acknowledge this deep paradox at the heart of your identity. Let go of the need for a simple, comforting answer. Find deep relaxation in the profound sense of gratitude for your own memories, for the continuous thread of consciousness that constitutes your life right now. Appreciate your memory not as a simple database, but as the precious and fragile anchor of your very self, resting peacefully, with a deeper and more profound appreciation for the intricate, mysterious, and beautiful gift of your own remembered past. The malleability of memory. We have just confronted the terrifying void of amnesia, a catastrophic loss of memory that threatens the very foundation of the psychological self. Let us now turn to an even more subtle, more pervasive, and in some ways more unsettling truth about the nature of our past. We will explore the malleability of memory. The common-sense view of memory is that of a storage vault, a library, or a video recorder. We believe our experiences are faithfully recorded and then, when we remember, they are simply replayed. But decades of cognitive psychology and neuroscience have revealed this to be a profound illusion. Our memory is not a static archive. It is a dynamic, creative, and profoundly reconstructive process. Every time you recall a past event, you are not replaying it. You are, in a very real sense, recreating it, and this act of recreation can subtly and sometimes dramatically alter the memory itself. This is a deep psychology mystery, a mind fuck that questions the very authenticity of our personal history. If our memories are not a factual record, but an ever-evolving story, what does this mean for the nature of the self that is built upon them? Contemplating the fluid, storytelling nature of your own memory can be a profound path to deep relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin by understanding the difference between a reproductive and a reconstructive system. A computer's memory is reproductive. It stores and retrieves data with perfect fidelity, barring corruption. A digital photograph is a perfect copy of the light that hit the sensor. Our memory, however, is not like this at all. When we experience an event, our brain does not store a complete, holistic recording. It stores fragments, the sensory and emotional gists, of the experience, in various parts of the brain. When we later remember that event, our brain's retrieval process actively pulls these fragments back together and, crucially, fills in the gaps with plausible details, inferences, and information from other memories, all guided by our current beliefs, expectations, and emotional state. Remembering is an act of creative storytelling, using the shards of the past to build a coherent narrative in the present. The pioneering work of psychologist Elizabeth Loftus powerfully demonstrated this malleability. In her famous experiments on the misinformation effect, she showed how easily false memories can be created through suggestion. In one study, participants were shown a video of a car accident. Later, they were asked questions about what they saw. Some were asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? Others were asked the same question but with the word smashed replaced by hit. The participants who heard the more violent word, smashed, not only gave higher estimates of the car's speed, but a week later, they were significantly more likely to falsely remember seeing broken glass in the video, even though there was none. The single suggestive word had been unconsciously woven into their reconstruction of the memory, changing the facts of what they believed they had seen. This research has profound implications, especially for the reliability of eyewitness testimony in legal cases. It shows that a witness's memory can be easily and unintentionally contaminated by the way questions are asked by police or lawyers. An eyewitness can be incredibly confident in a memory that is demonstrably false, a memory that was created, in part, by post-event information. This process of reconstruction is not just a vulnerability to external suggestion. It is happening constantly within our own minds. Every time we recall a memory, the neural trace of that memory becomes temporarily labeled or changeable. In this state, it can be updated with new information, new emotions, new interpretations. This is the process of reconsolidation. For example, if you recall a happy childhood memory while you are in a sad mood, the sad feeling can become newly associated with that memory, subtly changing its emotional tone for all future recollections. This means that our memories are not static relics of the past. They are living, evolving parts of our psyche, constantly being reinterpreted and recolored by our present experience. The past is not a fixed country to which we can return. It is a landscape that is constantly being reshaped by the present. The mind fuck of the malleability of memory is its profound challenge to our sense of an authentic historical self. Our identity, as Locke suggested, is deeply tied to our memories. But if our memories are not a reliable record of the past, if they are constantly being edited and rewritten, then what does that say about the self that is built upon them? It suggests that our narrative of self is, in part, a fiction. We are not just remembering our lives. We are creating our lives through the very act of remembering. The you of today is remembering, and in doing so, creating a version of the you of yesterday. This psychology mystery forces us to ask why our memory system would be designed this way. Why is it not more like a computer's? From an evolutionary perspective, a perfectly reproductive, verbatim memory might not be the most adaptive system. A reconstructive memory is incredibly flexible. It allows us to generalize from past experiences, to learn, to update our understanding of the world, and to imagine future possibilities. It is a system designed not for historical accuracy, but for present-day problem-solving and future planning. The ability to forget details, to smooth over inconsistencies, and to create coherent, if not entirely factual narratives is what allows us to function without being overwhelmed by a flood of perfectly preserved, and often irrelevant or traumatic, past experiences. The ability to forget, or at least to soften the edges of bad memories, rosy retrospection, is crucial for our psychological well-being. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the nature of your own memory. Picture it not as a library of dusty factual books, but as a dynamic, flowing river of stories. Acknowledge that the stories of your past are not fixed in stone, but are being gently retold and reshaped with every recollection. See this malleability not as a flaw, but as a sign of the mind's profound creativity and its deep need for coherence and meaning. Let go of the need for your past to be a perfect, unchanging record. Find deep relaxation in the freedom that this idea provides. The freedom to reinterpret your own story, to find new meanings in old events, and to create a narrative of yourself that is more compassionate and more empowering, resting peacefully, floating calmly on the gentle, ever-changing river of your own remembered life. Hume's bundle theory. We have seen how the solid ground of memory can dissolve into a fluid, reconstructive process, shaking the foundation of a psychologically continuous self. Let us now take an even more radical and dizzying step into the void. We will explore one of the most skeptical, most challenging, and most profoundly unsettling ideas in the entire history of philosophy concerning the nature of the self. This is the bundle theory, most famously articulated by the 18th century Scottish philosopher David Hume. After a rigorous and unflinching act of introspection, Hume came to a shocking conclusion. There is no such thing as a stable, enduring I, or self, to be found. Instead, what we call the self is nothing more than a fleeting collection of perceptions, a bundle of disconnected thoughts, feelings, and sensations that are in perpetual flux and movement. This is a mind fuck of the highest order, a complete demolition of our most cherished and intuitive belief. It questions not just the continuity of our identity, but the very existence of an I at all. Contemplating this radical idea, this ultimate illusion of you, can be a profound, if initially disorienting, path to deep relaxation and a different kind of liberation as you fall asleep. Hume's argument stems from his strict empiricism, the philosophical belief that all our knowledge comes from sensory experience. He decided to apply this principle to the idea of the self. If the self is real, he reasoned, then it must be something we can perceive through our senses or through introspection. So, he turned his attention inward, searching for this elusive I. He looked for this single, continuous entity that was supposed to be the owner of his thoughts, the feeler of his feelings. And he found nothing. In his famous words from a treatise of human nature, he wrote, "For my part, when I enter most intimately into what I call myself, I always stumble on some particular perception or other, of heat or cold, light or shade, love or hatred, pain or pleasure. I never can catch myself at any time without a perception, and never can observe anything but the perception." He realized that his inner world was a constant parade of individual, distinct perceptions. He could observe a thought, a feeling of sadness, a sensation of warmth, a memory. But he could never observe the thing that was having these experiences. The self, the owner of the perceptions, was never present in the experience itself. All he could find was the stream of perceptions, the contents of consciousness. From this radical introspection, he drew his revolutionary conclusion. The self is not a single, unified, and enduring entity. It is a fiction, a conceptual error. What we call the self, Hume argued, is nothing but a bundle or collection of different perceptions, which succeed each other with an inconceivable rapidity and are in a perpetual flux and movement. Our minds, with their powerful habit of association, mistake this rapid succession of related experiences for the existence of a single, underlying thing that is having the experiences. We create the illusion of you by mentally bundling together the ever-changing stream of our inner life. The self is not the theater. It is just the succession of scenes playing out on an empty stage. This is a profound and deeply counterintuitive mindfuck. Our feeling of being a single, unified I is perhaps the most powerful and persistent of all our intuitions. Hume's theory declares that this feeling is a cognitive mistake, a fiction we have created out of habit. It questions the very subject of our existence. If there is no I, then who is it that is listening to these words right now? Who is it that will wake up in the morning? Hume's answer would be, listening is just a perception that is happening. Waking up will be another collection of perceptions. The assumption that there must be a single entity doing the listening or undergoing the waking is the very error he sought to expose. This perspective resonates powerfully with certain streams of Eastern philosophy, particularly Buddhism. The Buddhist doctrine of anatta, or no self, is a strikingly similar concept. Buddhism also teaches that upon close examination, no permanent, independent, and unchanging self can be found. What we call the self is a temporary aggregation of 5 skandhas, or bundles: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These are all in a constant state of flux, and our suffering arises from our ignorant clinging to this impermanent collection as if it were a solid, enduring I. The path to liberation in Buddhism is to see through this illusion of the self. The psychology mystery here is why the illusion of a unified self is so incredibly powerful and convincing. If we are just a bundle of perceptions, why do we feel so intensely like a single, continuous agent? Hume attributed this to the principles of association in our imagination. Our perceptions are linked by resemblance and causation, creating a smooth and coherent-seeming stream, which our mind then mistakes for a single underlying river. Modern neuroscience offers a different language for a similar idea. Our brain's default mode network constantly works to create a coherent narrative, linking past memories, present experiences, and future plans into the story of a single protagonist, the I. The self, in this view, is a useful center of narrative gravity, a conceptual tool the brain creates to organize information, but not a metaphysical entity. Hume's bundle theory is a radical form of skepticism that leaves us in a strange and disorienting place. If there is no enduring self, what happens to personal identity over time? The question becomes meaningless. What happens to moral responsibility? How can we hold a bundle of perceptions responsible for the actions of a past bundle? Hume himself admitted that while his philosophical reasoning led him to this conclusion, he found it impossible to live this way in his everyday life. The moment he left his study and engaged in conversation with friends, the powerful instinctual belief in his own self and the selves of others returned. As you continue to fall asleep, allow yourself to perform a gentle version of Hume's introspective experiment. Turn your awareness inward. Notice the flow of your inner world. A thought appears, a sensation in your body, a feeling, an image. Notice that these are just passing events in your consciousness. Now gently try to look for the you that is having these experiences. Can you find a single, solid, unchanging thinker behind the thoughts? Or do you only find more thoughts, more feelings, more sensations? Let go of the need to find a solid self. Contemplate the radical, liberating possibility of Hume's bundle theory, that you are not a thing at all, but a process, a beautiful, fleeting, and ever-changing collection of perceptions. Find deep relaxation in this dissolution of the ego. If there is no solid self to defend, no permanent I to worry about, then what is left? Only the gentle, peaceful, and mysterious flow of experience itself, resting calmly, a silent witness to the beautiful, ownerless stream of consciousness. The narrative theory of self. We have journeyed through the stark, dissolving landscape of Hume's bundle theory, the idea that there is no underlying self at all, just a fleeting collection of perceptions. For many, this view is too radical, too disconnected from our powerful, intuitive feeling of being a continuous person with a past, a present, and a future. Let us now explore a more modern and psychologically rich perspective that attempts to bridge this gap. We will delve into the narrative theory of self. This theory proposes that our sense of a continuous, unified identity is not a metaphysical thing we discover like a soul or a brain state, but is rather a story that we actively and continuously create about our own lives. We are, in essence, the protagonists and the authors of our own autobiographies. The self, in this view, is the story. The mystery of the narrative self is how this ongoing act of storytelling can create a powerful, coherent sense of I out of the chaotic and often contradictory data of our lives. This mindfuck questions the idea of a true self waiting to be found, suggesting instead that we are constantly inventing ourselves through the stories we tell. Contemplating your own life story can be a source of profound, creative relaxation as you fall asleep. The narrative theory of self draws on insights from philosophy, psychology, and literary theory, with key proponents like the philosophers Daniel Dennett, Paul Ricoeur, and Charles Taylor. The central idea is that human beings are fundamentally storytelling animals. We make sense of the world, of others, and of ourselves by weaving events into coherent narratives with plots, characters, themes, and turning points. Our sense of personal identity over time, according to this view, is not based on the continuity of our body or a soul, or even a simple chain of memories, but on the continuity of a single, unifying narrative. Think about your own sense of self. When someone asks, "Who are you?" you don't typically respond by describing your physical properties or your moment-to-moment perceptions. You tell a story. You might talk about where you were born, the key events of your childhood, your education, your career choices, your significant relationships, your hopes for the future. You select and organize the discrete events of your life into a meaningful plotline. This process of storytelling is not just something you do, it is what constitutes you. The I is the protagonist of this ongoing, ever-evolving story. This perspective elegantly handles many of the problems that plague the simpler versions of the memory theory. What about amnesia or the fact that we forget most of our lives? The narrative theory suggests that we don't need a complete, unbroken chain of memory. We only need enough key scaffolding memories to construct a coherent story that bridges the gaps. Our narrative self is like a historical novel, based on some factual anchor events, but with much of the connective tissue and the meaning filled in by the author, our own mind. What about profound personal change? How can we be the same person after a life-altering conversion or trauma? The narrative theory explains this by seeing these events as key turning points in our story. We are the same person in the sense that we are the same protagonist whose story now includes this dramatic new chapter. Our narrative provides the continuity. We say, "I used to be that kind of person, but then this happened, and now I am a different person." The very act of telling this story of change is what preserves the identity of the I who underwent the change. The mind-fuck of the narrative theory of self is its radical claim about the relationship between life and story. We tend to think that we first live our lives and then, as a secondary act, we tell stories about that life. The narrative theory suggests that these two processes are inseparable. The story is not just a report on the self, the story is the self. We are constantly and often unconsciously editing and reinterpreting our past to fit the needs of our present narrative. This is the malleability of memory in action, but viewed now as a feature, not a bug. It is our creative capacity as authors of our own lives. This questions the very idea of a pre-existing true self that we are trying to discover. Instead, it suggests that we are, in a very real sense, inventing ourselves from moment to moment through the narrative choices we make. The psychology mystery lies in understanding how this authoring process works and how it relates to our well-being. A healthy self, in this view, is one that is able to maintain a coherent, flexible, and largely positive life story. Psychological problems can arise when our narrative breaks down, when we are unable to make sense of a traumatic event, or when we become trapped in a self-defeating or thin story, e.g., "I am a victim, I am a failure." Much of psychotherapy from a narrative perspective can be seen as a process of restoring or reauthoring one's life, of helping a person to construct a new, more empowering and more coherent narrative about their past and their future. This has profound implications for our free will and our potential for change. If we are our stories, then we have the power to change ourselves by changing our stories. We can choose to focus on different themes, to reinterpret past events, and to write a different future chapter. This is an incredibly hopeful and empowering view of the self. It reframes our existence not as a fixed state of being, but as a creative project. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the story of your own life. See it not as a fixed history but as a grand, unfolding narrative. Acknowledge the key chapters, the turning points, the recurring themes. See yourself as both the protagonist, living the story, and the author, telling it. Contemplate the immense creative power you hold in this role as narrator. The power to choose what events you emphasize, to decide what they mean, and to write the next chapter in a way that aligns with your deepest values. Let go of the search for a fixed, unchanging true self, and instead find deep relaxation in the fluid, creative, and empowering idea of the narrative self, resting peacefully, the author of a unique and precious story, holding the pen and ready to dream the chapters of the night. The brain and the self. We have journeyed through the abstract and philosophical landscapes of the self, from the immaterial soul to the narrative I. Let us now ground our inquiry in the physical, in the 3-pound universe of intricate, gelatinous tissue that resides within your skull. We will now explore the relationship between the brain and the self, the search for the neurological basis of our identity. If the I is not a soul but a product of our physical being, where in the brain does it reside? Is there a central command center, a captain's chair, where the self sits and receives information and makes decisions? Or is the self a more distributed, decentralized phenomenon, an emergent property of the brain's vast, interconnected network? The scientific search for the I in the brain is a profound psychology mystery, a mindfuck that questions our intuitive sense of a single unified command center. It reveals that our feeling of a coherent self is a remarkable construction, a masterpiece of neural integration. Contemplating this biological foundation of your own consciousness can be a source of deep, grounding relaxation as you fall asleep. For centuries, thinkers have sought to locate the seat of the soul or the self within the brain. René Descartes famously and incorrectly proposed the pineal gland, a tiny structure in the center of the brain, as the principal point of interaction between the immaterial soul and the physical body. In the 19th century, the pseudoscience of phrenology attempted to map personality traits onto specific bumps on the skull, believing that different mental faculties were located in discrete brain organs. While these early attempts were misguided, the core intuition that different mental functions are localized to different brain regions has been overwhelmingly confirmed by modern neuroscience. We know that the occipital lobe is crucial for vision, the temporal lobe for hearing and memory, the frontal lobe for planning and decision-making. So where is the self center? The mystery is that the more we learn about the brain, the more elusive a single central I becomes. There is no Cartesian theater, no single spot in the brain where everything comes together and is presented to a central conscious observer. Instead, the brain is a massively parallel processor. Different aspects of a single experience are processed in different, widely distributed areas simultaneously. When you see a red ball, the redness, the roundness, and the motion are all processed by different neural populations. Yet you experience a single unified object. This is the binding problem, the mystery of how the brain integrates all this distributed processing into a single coherent conscious moment. However, while there is no single self spot, neuroscientists have identified a network of brain regions that are crucial for creating our sense of self. This is the default mode network, DMN. The DMN is a collection of interconnected brain areas, including parts of the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, and the angular gyrus, that is most active when we are at rest, when our minds are wandering, when we are not focused on a specific external task. And what do our minds do when they wander? They think about ourselves. The DMN is the neurological engine of self-referential thought. It is active when we are recalling our past, autobiographical memory, imagining our future, thinking about our own personality traits, and trying to infer the mental states of other people. The DMN is, in a sense, the brain's storyteller, the constant narrator of the narrative self. It is the part of the brain that creates the ongoing story of me. This is a profound insight. It suggests that our sense of a continuous, enduring self is not a static thing, but an active, ongoing process, a story constantly being spun by this specific neural network. When the DMN is less active, such as during intense, focused, flow states or in deep meditative states, our sense of a separate narrative self can seem to fade or dissolve, replaced by a feeling of being purely present or at one with the activity. The I is not always online. It is a specific mode of brain function. Another crucial brain region for our sense of self is the insular cortex. The insula is the primary cortical area for interoception, the sense of the internal state of our own body. It receives and integrates all the signals from our organs, our muscles, our gut, creating a moment-to-moment map of our physiological well-being. Neuroscientists like Antonio Damasio argue that this fundamental, precognitive feeling of our own living body is the very foundation of consciousness and the self. It is the proto-self, the feeling of being a bounded, living organism, upon which all our higher-level thoughts and narratives are built. Your sense of I is literally grounded in the feeling of your own heartbeat, your own breath, your own gut. The mind fuck of the neurological search for the self is this realization. The I is not a single entity but a multi-layered construction. It is a story told by the default mode network, grounded in the bodily feelings generated by the insula, and executed through the decisions of the prefrontal cortex. The unified, simple self we experience is an illusion, a seamless user interface created by the incredibly complex and distributed workings of the brain. There is no single driver in the car. The car is driving itself through the coordinated action of countless different, specialized parts. This questions our very language about the self. When we say, "I decided to raise my arm," it implies a single, unified "I" that issued a command. But neuroscience reveals a far more complex process, a cascade of neural activity, much of it unconscious, that precedes the conscious experience of the decision. The conscious "I" might be more like a press secretary, observing the decision that the brain has already made and then taking credit for it, announcing it as its own. Understanding the neurological basis of the self does not diminish us. It does not mean we are just a pack of neurons. Instead, it should fill us with a sense of profound awe. The fact that this 3-pound organ, this intricate web of electricity and chemistry, can generate the rich, stable, and unified subjective experience of being a self is the single greatest wonder in the known universe. It is the mystery of how the brain's objective, physical processes create the subjective, psychological reality we inhabit. As you continue to fall asleep, bring a gentle awareness to the very fact of your own awareness. Acknowledge that this feeling, this sense of "I," is being generated right now by the silent, intricate, and beautiful dance of billions of neurons within your own brain. Picture the default mode network quietly spinning the story of your past and future. Feel the insula gently monitoring the quiet rhythms of your body. Let go of the need to find a single, central "you." Find deep relaxation in the profound mystery of this distributed intelligence, in the trust that this complex, self-organizing system that is your brain is the very source of your being, resting peacefully as a unified field of consciousness, emerging from the vast, silent, and incredibly intelligent cosmos of your own mind. Split-brain patience and the divided self. We have just contemplated the self as an integrated, emergent property of the entire brain network. But what happens if this network is broken? What happens to the self when the two great hemispheres of the brain are surgically disconnected? This is not just a thought experiment. It is the reality for a small group of split-brain patients, individuals who underwent a radical surgery to treat severe epilepsy, a surgery that severed the corpus callosum, the massive bundle of nerve fibers that acts as the primary communication highway between the left and right hemispheres. The study of these patients, pioneered by Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga, has provided some of the most bizarre, profound, and deeply unsettling insights into the nature of the self and consciousness. Their cases represent a natural experiment that questions the very unity of our "I," suggesting that a single human skull can, in a very real sense, be home to two separate and sometimes conflicting conscious agents. This is a profound mind fuck, a psychology mystery that challenges our most fundamental assumption of a single unified self, inviting deep relaxation through the contemplation of our own mind's hidden duality as you fall asleep. To understand the world of the split-brain patient, we must first recall the basics of brain lateralization. For most right-handed people, the left hemisphere of the brain is dominant for language, speech production, and analytical, logical thought. It is the brain's interpreter, the part that excels at creating coherent narratives and explanations. The right hemisphere, on the other hand, is more specialized for spatial reasoning, facial recognition, emotional processing, and more holistic, intuitive modes of thought. In a normal brain, these two hemispheres are in constant, seamless communication via the corpus callosum, sharing information so rapidly that we experience our mind as a single, unified whole. In a split-brain patient, this communication is severed. The two hemispheres are now operating in relative isolation. Information presented to one side of the body or one visual field is primarily processed by the opposite hemisphere, and that information is now stuck on that side. This allows researchers to speak to each hemisphere independently. The classic experiment goes like this. A split-brain patient is asked to stare at a dot in the center of a screen. A word, such as key, is flashed very briefly to their left visual field, which is processed by their right hemisphere. The patient is then asked, "What did you see?" Because the language centers are in the left hemisphere, and the right hemisphere can no longer communicate with it, the patient will verbally report, "I saw nothing." The conscious, speaking self, the self associated with the left brain, is genuinely unaware of the word. But then comes the astonishing part. The patient is asked to reach under a screen with their left hand, which is controlled by the right hemisphere, and select the object they saw from a group of items. Without hesitation, the left hand will correctly pick up the key. When the patient is then asked, Why are you holding a key? A profound conflict arises. The speaking left hemisphere, which did not see the word key, and has no knowledge of why the left hand picked it up, must now make sense of its own body's action. And this is where its role as the interpreter comes in. It will instantly confabulate, creating a plausible but completely fictional story to explain the action. The patient might say, "Oh, I must have been fiddling with the locks on my door earlier." The left brain creates a narrative to maintain a sense of a single rational self, even when it is completely ignorant of the true cause of the action. This reveals a staggering possibility. We have two separate minds, two separate streams of awareness, cohabiting in our heads. The right hemisphere knew about the key but couldn't speak. The left hemisphere could speak but didn't know about the key. The patient's conscious, verbal report came from only one of these minds. This divided self is revealed in even more dramatic ways. In one experiment, the command, "walk," was flashed to the right hemisphere. The patient got up and started to walk away. When the experimenter asked the patient, speaking to their left hemisphere, where they were going, the patient's left brain interpreter, again with no access to the original command, immediately confabulated an answer, saying something like, "I'm going to get a Coke." It creates a reason for a behavior whose true origin is a mystery to it. The mind fuck of the split-brain patients is its direct, empirical challenge to the unity of the self. It suggests that the feeling of being a single, coherent I is a fragile construction, a story told by our language-dominant left hemisphere, which is constantly working to create a unified narrative, even if it has to invent parts of it. The right hemisphere, more silent and less verbal, seems to have its own separate sphere of awareness, its own intentions and its own knowledge. In some cases, this has led to intermanual conflict, where the two hands seem to be controlled by different wills, one hand trying to button a shirt while the other tries to unbutton it. This psychology mystery forces us to question everything we think we know about our own inner unity. If the self can be physically divided by a surgeon's scalpel, was it ever truly a single, indivisible entity to begin with? Is our normal, unified consciousness simply a result of the two hemispheres being in constant, close communication? Is the I that we experience primarily the voice of our left brain interpreter? What is the subjective experience of the right hemisphere, the silent, nonverbal partner in our mind? These are profound questions with no easy answers. The study of split-brain patients suggests that the self is not a single point, but a confederation. In a normal brain, the committee is in constant, harmonious session. In the split brain, the committee has been divided, and we can see the members trying to operate independently. This provides powerful evidence against the simple soul theory, how could a single soul be divided? And complicates even the body theory, if the single organism has two centers of consciousness, is it one person or two? It aligns most closely with a view of the self as a constructed, emergent property of brain function, one that is dependent on the brain's physical and informational integrity. As you continue to fall asleep, gently contemplate the two great hemispheres of your own brain, resting quietly in your skull. Imagine the massive bridge of the corpus callosum, the millions of neural fibers, through which they are constantly whispering to each other, creating the seamless, unified world of your conscious experience. Acknowledge the profound mystery and the beautiful partnership of this inner duality. See your unified self not as a given, but as a remarkable achievement of neural integration. A daily, moment-to-moment miracle of communication. Find deep relaxation in this sense of a holistic, integrated mind, letting go of the idea of a simple, single I, and instead resting peacefully as the beautiful, complex, and wonderfully coordinated chorus of your entire brain. The ego in psychology, Freud. Having witnessed the neurological dance of the brain's hemispheres, let us now return to the world of psychological metaphor, to explore one of the most influential and enduring models of the conscious self. We will delve into Sigmund Freud's concept of the ego. In our everyday language, ego often has negative connotations of arrogance or self-importance. But in Freudian psychology, the ego is something far more fundamental and essential. It is the core of our conscious identity, the part of our psyche that we experience as I. But this I is not a king on a throne in absolute command of its inner kingdom. Instead, Freud envisioned the ego as a pragmatic, perpetually embattled mediator, a diplomat caught in a relentless inner conflict between the primal, instinctual demands of the id, the harsh, moralistic prohibitions of the superego, and the challenging constraints of external reality. The mystery of the ego is its remarkable and often precarious ability to navigate these warring factions to maintain a semblance of sanity and coherence. This mindfuck questions our intuitive sense of being a unified, self-directed agent, reframing our conscious self as a stressed but resilient negotiator in a constant, internal psychic struggle. Understanding this model can be a source of profound self-compassion and deep relaxation as you fall asleep. To understand the ego, we must first recall its two powerful and often irrational masters. In the deep, unconscious basement of the psyche resides the ID, a chaotic cauldron of raw, instinctual energy. The ID operates purely on the pleasure principle, seeking immediate gratification for its primal urges, hunger, aggression, libido, without any regard for logic, morality, or consequences. It is the screaming, untamed animal within. In the attic of the psyche resides the superego, the internalized voice of parental and societal authority. It is our conscience and our ego ideal, striving for moral perfection. It operates on a principle of absolute, often punishing, morality, inflicting guilt and shame for any perceived transgression of its rigid rules. It is the stern, judgmental parent within. Caught between these two powerful and contradictory forces is the ego. The ego, which emerges from the ID as the infant learns to navigate the external world, is the organized, rational part of our personality. It is the seat of our conscious awareness, our sense of self. The ego operates on the reality principle. Its primary job is to find realistic, safe, and socially acceptable ways to satisfy the ID's powerful desires without incurring the wrath of the superego or the negative consequences of the external world. The ego is a problem solver, a strategist, a diplomat. It is the part of you that thinks, plans, remembers, and makes conscious decisions. Freud famously used the metaphor of a rider on a horse. The horse is the ID, providing the powerful, raw energy and forward momentum. The rider is the ego, attempting to steer this powerful animal, to guide its energy in a productive direction, and to keep it from running wild. The rider is often at the mercy of the horse's superior strength, and can only do their best to manage and direct it, sometimes having to just go along for the ride. This metaphor beautifully captures the ego's precarious position. It is not the ultimate source of power, but the agent that attempts to channel and manage that power. The constant, ongoing inner conflict between the ID's demands, I want it now, the superego's prohibitions, you can't have it, it's wrong, and reality's constraints, you can't afford it, or it's against the law, generates what Freud called anxiety. This anxiety is a signal to the ego that it is in danger of being overwhelmed. To protect itself from this anxiety, the ego develops a set of unconscious tools, the defense mechanisms we have explored in another journey. Repression, denial, projection, rationalization. These are all strategies the ego uses to manage the conflict, to reduce the anxiety, and to maintain a sense of stability. A healthy ego is not one that has no conflict, but one that has a flexible and mature set of defense mechanisms to manage that inevitable conflict. The mindfuck of Freud's model of the ego is its radical dethroning of the conscious self. In the pre-Freudian Cartesian view, the I was a rational, transparent, and sovereign entity. Freud's model reveals the conscious I to be a small, embattled, and often compromised part of a much larger and more chaotic psychic system. It questions our sense of being in control. It suggests that our conscious thoughts, decisions, and feelings are often not the primary drivers of our behavior, but are rather the results, the compromises, the post hoc rationalizations that emerge from a deep, unconscious struggle. The I is not the king, but the king's beleaguered prime minister, constantly trying to broker peace between the powerful, warring factions of the inner kingdom. The psychology mystery lies in how this delicate balancing act is achieved. How does the ego, with its limited resources, manage to contain the immense power of the ID and the harsh judgment of the superego? It is a testament to the remarkable resilience and creativity of the human psyche. The ego's ability to sublimate primal urges into art, to rationalize its compromises, to negotiate with reality, is the very foundation of civilization and individual psychological health. When this negotiation fails, when the ego is overwhelmed by the ID, leading to impulsive, psychotic behavior, or crushed by the superego, leading to neurotic guilt and depression, psychological illness results. Contemplating the ego in this Freudian sense can be a profound source of self-compassion. It allows us to see our own inner conflicts not as a sign of weakness or failure, but as an inherent and universal part of the human condition. When we feel pulled in two different directions, When we act in ways that seem contradictory, when we struggle with guilt or temptation, we can recognize this as the natural drama of the ID, ego, and superego. This understanding can soften our own inner critic, the superego, and allow us to have a more compassionate and patient relationship with our own struggles and inconsistencies. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to your own sense of I, your conscious self, your ego. Acknowledge the incredible and often difficult work it does every day, mediating between your deepest desires, your highest ideals, and the practical realities of the world. See it not as a powerful commander, but as a wise and resilient mediator, a peacemaker in the often turbulent landscape of your own mind. Let go of the need for yourself to be perfectly consistent or in complete control. Find deep relaxation in the compassionate understanding of your own inner conflict. Appreciate the strength and flexibility of your ego, its tireless efforts to maintain balance and protect you. Resting peacefully, allowing the inner diplomat to finally rest, and letting the different parts of your psyche find a quiet, temporary truce in the stillness of sleep. The persona and the shadow. Jung. From the conflicted world of the Freudian ego, let us now journey into the rich, symbolic landscape of Jungian psychology to explore a fundamental duality in the nature of the self. We will contemplate the archetypal pair of the persona and the shadow. These two concepts describe the profound and often dramatic split between the public self we present to the world and the hidden self that resides in the depths of our unconscious. The persona, from the Latin word for an actor's mask, is our social facade, the carefully crafted role we play to fit into society and gain acceptance. The shadow, in stark contrast, is the disowned, dark side of our personality, the repository for all the traits, desires, and feelings we have repressed because they are inconsistent with the mask we wear. The dynamic between these two figures is a central drama in the quest for self-knowledge, a mindfuck that questions the very authenticity of our identity. It is a psychology mystery that reveals how the creation of our ideal self simultaneously creates a hidden and often powerful counter-self. Understanding this inner duality is a crucial step towards wholeness, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin with the persona. The persona is an essential and necessary part of our psychological makeup. It is our interface with the external world. As social creatures, we cannot simply express every raw impulse and feeling we have. To function in society, to have a career, to maintain friendships, we must adapt. We create a public self, a role that is appropriate for the situation. You have a professional persona, a family persona, a friend persona. Each one emphasizes certain aspects of your personality while concealing others. The persona is our psychological clothing, allowing us to navigate different social contexts with grace and efficiency. A healthy, flexible persona is a sign of good adaptation and social intelligence. It is the tool our ego uses to meet the demands of the world. The problem, however, is not the existence of the persona, but the danger of identifying with it. This is a profound hidden mind trap. It occurs when we mistake the mask for our true face. We begin to believe that we are the role we are playing. A doctor might become so identified with their persona of the cool, competent, and detached professional that they lose touch with their own vulnerability and emotional life. A person might become so identified with their persona of the nice guy or the selfless mother that they deny their own needs, their anger, and their assertiveness. When we over-identify with the persona, our identity becomes rigid, one-sided, and inauthentic. We live a life that is a performance for an external audience driven by the need for social approval. What will people think? Rather than by our own genuine feelings and values. This can lead to a profound sense of emptiness, alienation, and the feeling of being an imposter, even when we are successful in the eyes of the world. Now, let us turn to what lies behind the mask, to what is actively excluded from the persona. This is the realm of the shadow. The shadow is the archetypal other within. It is the repository for everything in ourselves that we have deemed unacceptable, inferior, or evil. As we are socialized, we learn to repress our more primitive instincts, our socially disruptive emotions like rage and envy, our selfishness, our greed, and any trait that does not fit with the idealized image of our conscious self and our persona. These disowned parts do not disappear. They are cast into the darkness of the subconscious mind, where they coalesce to form the shadow self. The mindfuck of the shadow is that it is not just a passive garbage bin of negative traits. It is an active, autonomous part of our psyche with its own energy. And the more we repress it, the darker, more powerful, and more dangerous it becomes. An unacknowledged shadow will always find a way to make its presence known. Most commonly, it does so through projection. We fail to see our own greed, but we become self-righteously obsessed with the greed of others. We deny our own capacity for anger, but we are constantly surrounded by angry people. The world becomes a screen for our own disowned qualities. The intense, irrational, and often moralistic reactions we have to the flaws of others are a powerful clue that our own shadow has been hooked. An unacknowledged shadow can also lead to self-sabotage, depression, or sudden, shocking eruptions of out-of-character behavior. The nice guy, who suddenly explodes in a fit of rage, the pious moralist who is caught in a scandalous affair. These are often the dramatic manifestations of a long-repressed shadow finally bursting forth, demanding to be seen. However, and this is the crucial and hopeful part of Jung's theory, the shadow is not purely negative. Because it is the container for everything that is unconscious, it often holds our golden qualities as well. It can be the source of our vitality, our creativity, our healthy aggression, our assertiveness, and our connection to our authentic, instinctual nature. A person who has built a persona of being overly rational and intellectual might have a shadow that is rich with artistic passion and intuition. The work of psychological maturity, or individuation as Jung called it, is not to destroy the shadow, but to integrate it. This is the courageous and lifelong process of turning inward, of withdrawing our projections, and of consciously acknowledging and owning the disowned parts of ourselves. By bringing the shadow's contents into the light of consciousness, we can tame their destructive potential and harness their life-giving energy. We become less self-righteous and more compassionate, both with ourselves and with others, because we have faced the darkness within. We become not perfect but whole. The mystery of the persona and the shadow is this deep, dynamic, and often unconscious dance of identity. We are constantly navigating the tension between our public self and our hidden self. The more rigidly we cling to the light of the persona, the darker and more powerful the shadow it casts. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the different roles you play in your life, the different masks of your persona. Acknowledge them with appreciation, for they allow you to navigate the social world. Now, with a sense of profound, non-judgmental compassion, acknowledge the existence of your shadow, the unseen and disowned parts of your being. You do not need to confront its contents. Simply recognize that it is there, a necessary and vital part of your wholeness. Find deep relaxation in the idea of integration, in the gentle movement towards a more authentic and complete self, a self that can embrace both its light and its darkness, resting peacefully, allowing the mask to fall away and being for a moment, simply and completely, your whole mysterious self. The socially constructed self. We have journeyed inward, exploring the self as a soul, a body, a stream of consciousness, a narrative. We have seen it as a drama of ego, persona, and shadow. Let us now turn our focus outward to explore a profound and deeply counterintuitive idea, that our sense of self, our very identity, is not something we discover in isolation, but is largely a product of our social interactions. We will explore the concept of the socially constructed self, most famously captured in the metaphor of the looking-glass self. This theory, developed by sociologist Charles Horton Cooley, proposes that our sense of I is not an independent entity, but is a reflection, a composite image built from our perceptions of how others perceive us. We are, in a sense, who we think others think we are. This is a profound mindfuck that questions the very idea of an autonomous, individual self, suggesting instead that our identity is a deeply relational, intersubjective creation. Contemplating this social mirror can be a source of deep, connective relaxation as you fall asleep. The concept of the looking-glass self unfolds in a three-step psychological process that happens constantly and often unconsciously in our social lives. The first step is our imagination of our appearance to the other person. When we are with someone, we are constantly and often automatically trying to imagine how we appear to them. What do they see? What is their first impression of our clothes, our posture, our words? We are trying to construct a mental model of the other person's perception of us. The second step is our imagination of their judgment of that appearance. We don't just imagine how we appear. We go a step further and imagine what they are thinking or feeling about that appearance. Does our joke seem witty or foolish to them? Does our opinion seem insightful or ignorant? Does our new haircut look stylish or strange in their eyes? We are trying to read their minds, to infer their evaluation of us. The third and most crucial step is our resulting feeling about ourselves, such as pride or mortification. Our self-feeling is a direct emotional response to our perception of the other person's judgment. If we imagine that they are judging us positively, we feel a sense of pride, confidence, and self-worth. If we imagine that they are judging us negatively, we feel a sense of shame, embarrassment, or inadequacy. According to Cooley, this self is the sum total of these reflected appraisals, this constant swirl of imagined judgments that we internalize over our lifetime. Our identity is not a monologue, it is a dialogue, a conversation between ourselves and our imagined perception of others. The mindfuck of the looking glass self is its radical claim that we do not have direct access to our own self. We only come to know who we are through the reflection we see in the mirror of other people. The self is not an internal substance but a social product. This profoundly questions our Western individualistic ideal of the self-made, autonomous individual. It suggests that our sense of identity is fundamentally dependent on others. We cannot be a self all by ourselves. This is a deeply relational view of existence. This psychology mystery has profound implications for our development. From our earliest moments, our sense of self is forged in the crucible of social interaction. The way our parents and caregivers mirror us back to ourselves as infants, with smiles of delight or looks of anxiety and disapproval, forms the very foundation of our self-concept. If we are consistently seen with love and acceptance, we internalize a sense of being lovable and acceptable. If we are consistently met with criticism or neglect, we can internalize a deep and lasting sense of shame and worthlessness. We become the person we believe others see us as. This process continues throughout our lives. Our identity is shaped by the feedback we get from our friends, our teachers, our colleagues, and our culture at large. The social roles we inhabit, as a parent, a doctor, an artist, a leader, come with a set of expectations from others, and as we perform these roles, we gradually internalize those expectations into our sense of self. The I is a mosaic of all the social mirrors we have ever looked into. This also helps to explain the immense power of social conformity and the pain of social rejection. If our very sense of self is built from the perceived approval of others, then the threat of disapproval or ostracism is not just a social inconvenience. It is an existential threat, a shattering of the mirror upon which our identity depends. We conform to group norms in part to ensure that the reflection we see in the looking glass of our tribe is a positive and accepting one. The mystery deepens when we consider the potential for distortion. The looking glass is not a perfect mirror. Our perception of what others think of us is just that, a perception. It is not a direct mind reading. It is an inference, a guess, and it is subject to all of our own biases, insecurities, and projections. A person with low self-esteem might consistently interpret neutral feedback from others as negative, thus creating a self-reinforcing cycle of perceived rejection and low self-worth. A person with a narcissistic tendency might distort all feedback to confirm their own sense of grandiosity. We are not just looking into a mirror, we are looking into a mirror that is warped by the shape of our own subconscious mind. We are often just seeing a reflection of our own hopes and fears. So, are we hopelessly trapped in this hall of social mirrors? Not entirely. The development of a mature self involves learning to be more discerning about which reflections we internalize. It is the process of developing a more stable internal sense of self-worth that is less dependent on the constant validation of others. It is about learning to choose our mirrors more wisely, to surround ourselves with people who see us accurately and compassionately. And it is about developing the capacity for self-reflection, for questioning our own interpretations of what others think, for realizing that our perception of their judgment is not necessarily the truth. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to your own sense of self, your I. Now, with a sense of quiet, non-judgmental curiosity, contemplate how this feeling of you has been shaped by the important people in your life. The reflections you saw in the looking glass of your parents, your friends, your teachers, your partners. Acknowledge the profound truth that you did not create yourself in a vacuum, but in a rich, complex, and lifelong dance of social interaction. See this not as a loss of individuality, but as a testament to our deep and fundamental interconnectedness. Find deep relaxation in this relational view of the self. Let go of the burden of a purely isolated individual identity, and rest peacefully in the quiet, supportive, and beautifully socially constructed web of your own being. The role of authenticity. Having just explored the profound idea that our self is a socially constructed reflection, a story we tell, or a bundle of fleeting perceptions, we are naturally led to a powerful counter-impulse, a deep and persistent human yearning. This is the search for the true self, the quest for authenticity. The idea of authenticity posits that beneath the layers of our social conditioning, our learned roles, and our public personas, there exists a more fundamental, more genuine, and more real self. To live authentically is to discover this core self and to express it truthfully in our lives, to align our actions with our deepest, innermost values and feelings. This search for the true self is a central theme in humanistic psychology, existential philosophy, and many spiritual traditions. But it is also a profound psychology mystery. Does this true self actually exist as a pre-existing entity waiting to be found? Or is it, too, a kind of creation, an ideal we strive for? The mindfuck is the paradox that the very act of searching for our authentic self might be the process that creates it. Contemplating the role of authenticity can be a source of deep personal meaning and relaxation as you fall asleep. The concept of authenticity stands in direct opposition to the more fragmented and illusory views of the self we have been exploring. It pushes back against the idea that we are nothing but a bundle of perceptions or a reflection in the eyes of others. It affirms our intuitive, powerful feeling that there is a real me at the core of our being. This true self is often described as the source of our genuine interests, our innate talents, our deepest values, and our unique potential. It is the part of us that is not conditioned by the shoulds and oughts of society, the part that is in touch with our organismic embodied experience. The psychological need for authenticity seems to be a fundamental one. When we feel we are living authentically, when our actions are aligned with our inner values, we experience a sense of wholeness, of vitality, of being right with ourselves. When we are inauthentic, when we are merely playing a role, betraying our own values to please others, or living a life that feels false, we can experience a range of negative psychological states. Anxiety, depression, a sense of emptiness, alienation, and chronic unease. This feeling of inauthenticity is often described as a form of self-betrayal, a quiet inner pain that comes from being disconnected from our own core. The existentialist philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Soren Kierkegaard placed the challenge of authenticity at the very center of human existence. For Sartre, as we've seen, existence precedes essence. There is no pre-given true self or human nature. We are radically free, and we create who we are through our choices and actions. For Sartre, authenticity means courageously embracing this radical freedom and taking full responsibility for the self we are creating. Inauthenticity, or bad faith, is the attempt to flee from this freedom and responsibility by pretending we are not free, by blaming our actions on our circumstances, our personality, or the roles we are forced to play. To be authentic is to be the conscious, responsible author of your own life. Humanistic psychologists like Carl Rogers had a slightly different view. Rogers believed that we all possess an organismic valuing process, an innate internal guidance system that knows what is good for us, what will lead to our growth and flourishing. This is the true self. However, as we grow up, we often internalize conditions of worth from others. We learn that we will only be loved and accepted if we think, feel, and behave in certain ways. To gain this acceptance, we create a false self, a persona that is aligned with these external expectations, and we lose touch with our own authentic organismic self. For Rogers, psychotherapy was a process of providing a safe, accepting, and non-judgmental space where a person could begin to listen to and trust their own inner experience once again, to reconnect with their true self. The mindfuck lies in the mystery of this true self. Is it something we discover, a pre-existing essence that we have lost touch with, as Rogers might suggest? Or is it something we create, a project of our own free will, as Sartre might argue? Or is the very idea of a single, true self, a romantic and misleading fiction? Perhaps, as the narrative theorist would suggest, the true self is simply the most coherent and deeply felt story we have about who we are, a story that we are constantly in the process of writing and revising. This questions our entire project of finding ourselves. Perhaps the self is not a thing to be found like a lost object. Perhaps it is a process to be engaged in, a direction to be moved in. Perhaps authenticity is not about being a certain kind of person, but about the quality of our relationship with our own experience. It is the practice of self-awareness, of knowing our own feelings, our own values. It is the practice of self-acceptance, of owning all parts of ourselves, including our shadow. And it is the practice of self-expression, of having the courage to act in accordance with our inner values, even in the face of social pressure. In this sense, the search for the true self is not a search for a static, hidden entity. It is the ongoing, dynamic process of creating a self that is more conscious, more integrated, and more aligned. The paradox is that you become more yourself, not by finding a finished product, but by fully engaging in the messy, creative, and lifelong process of self-creation. As you continue to fall asleep, allow your mind to gently hold the concept of authenticity. Contemplate the feeling of being your true self, a feeling of wholeness, of integrity, of being aligned with your own deepest values. Acknowledge the deep human yearning for this state. See the search for authenticity not as a quest for a hidden object, but as a commitment to a way of living, a commitment to awareness, to honesty, and to courage. Let go of the pressure to find your one true self. Find deep relaxation in the idea of the self as a creative process, a journey, not a destination. Trust in your own inner compass, your own organismic valuing process, to guide you, resting peacefully in the simple, profound, and authentic experience of being you right here, right now. Parfit's teleporter problem. We have explored the self as a soul, a body, a memory, a story. Let us now put these theories to the ultimate test with one of the most brilliant, terrifying, and consequential thought experiments in modern philosophy. We will explore philosopher Derek Parfit's teleporter problem. Imagine a machine, a teleporter, that can transport you from Earth to Mars. It works by scanning your body with perfect precision, recording the exact quantum state of every single particle. It then destroys your body on Earth, transmits this vast stream of information to Mars at the speed of light, and a replicator on Mars uses this information to create a perfect atom-for-atom replica of you. This new person on Mars has all your memories, your personality, your feelings, your sense of self. They wake up believing they are you, having experienced a seamless journey. The question is, did you survive the trip? Or did you die on Earth and get replaced by a perfect copy? This is a harrowing choice that forces us to confront what we truly mean by survival and personal identity. It is a profound mindfuck that takes the ship of Theseus paradox and applies it to our very being, questioning the very nature of what it is that we want to preserve when we desire to continue existing. Let this profound puzzle gently deconstruct your assumptions about the self as you fall asleep. Let's analyze the standard teleporter scenario first. You step into the scanner on Earth. It records your information. Your body on Earth is painlessly disintegrated. The information is transmitted. And on Mars, a new body, physically and psychologically identical to you, is created. Most people have a strong visceral intuition that this is not survival. This is death and replacement. The person on Mars may think they are you, they may have all your memories and feel your emotions, but the original you, the one who stepped into the scanner, has ceased to exist. This intuition aligns with the body theory of identity, or at least a brain-based version of it. It suggests that our identity is tied to the physical and causal continuity of our specific brain. If that continuity is broken, even for an instant, identity is lost. Now, Parfit introduces a series of brilliant variations to challenge this intuition. Variation 1, the non-destructive teleporter. Imagine the teleporter is upgraded. It can now scan you and create the replica on Mars without destroying your body on Earth. You step out of the scanner on Earth, feeling perfectly normal. At the same time, your perfect replica wakes up on Mars. Now we have a profound problem. You clearly survived as you are still on Earth. But there is another person on Mars who has an equally strong claim to being you, with all your memories and psychological continuity. This scenario seems to prove that what the teleporter creates is a copy, not a continuation of the original. This seems to reinforce our initial intuition. But now for the truly mind-bending part. Variation 2, the branching scenario. Parfit asks us to consider what this non-destructive teleporter reveals about survival. He argues that in this branching scenario, where you have one version on Earth and one on Mars, this is better than ordinary survival. You have survived in two places at once. Your psychological life has been duplicated. Now, what if, after the duplication, your original body on Earth is diagnosed with a fatal heart condition and will die in a few minutes? You would likely be immensely comforted by the knowledge that your replica on Mars, with all your memories, your character, and your life projects, will continue to live. This seems very much like survival. So, Parfit poses the crucial question. If you would consider the continuation of your replica on Mars as a form of survival in the case where your original body dies of a heart attack, why would you consider it death in the original teleporter scenario, where your body is disintegrated by the machine? The only difference between the two cases is the cause of the original body's demise. But why should the cause of death of the original body determine whether your psychological replica counts as survival? This is the paradox. The non-destructive case seems to prove the replica is just a copy. But the branching case with the heart attack seems to prove that the replica's continuation is a form of survival. The logic becomes deeply entangled. Parfit's radical conclusion is that our concept of personal identity is not what truly matters. We have a deep, instinctual belief that our survival is an all-or-nothing affair. Either I continue to exist or I don't. Parfit argues that this is a mistake. What truly matters in survival, what we should rationally care about, is not strict, one-to-one identity, but what he calls relation R, psychological connectedness and/or continuity. This means the continuation of your memories, your intentions, your character, your desires. In the original teleporter scenario, relation R is perfectly preserved. The person on Mars is fully psychologically continuous with you. Therefore, Parfit argues, you have survived in the only way that truly matters, even if you are not, in a strict philosophical sense, the same person. Our mistake is our focus on identity rather than on survival in this broader psychological sense. He asks us to imagine a spectrum of cases, from a few of your cells being replaced, to all of your cells, to being scanned and replicated. At what point do we stop calling it survival? He suggests there is no sharp line, and that our obsession with a single, unique I is the source of the confusion. The mindfuck of Parfit's teleporter problem is its profound and direct assault on our ego, on our deep-seated belief in the special importance of our own unique self. It suggests that our survival is not a metaphysical fact, but a matter of degree. It questions the very thing we are trying to preserve when we fear death. Are we afraid of the cessation of our unique identity, or the cessation of our psychological life? Parfit suggests we should only care about the latter. As you continue to fall asleep, allow yourself to step into the chamber of the teleporter. Imagine your body being scanned, every atom, every memory recorded, and then a perfect replica of you appearing on a distant world. Is that person you? Did you survive? Feel the powerful, intuitive, the sense of your own unique physical continuity being broken. Now, imagine the branching scenario where both of you exist, and then your original body fades away. Does the continuation of your replica now feel like survival? A form of life after death? Let this profound paradox gently dissolve your rigid sense of a single, indivisible self. Contemplate the radical idea that what matters is not the survival of the I, but the continuation of your story, your memories, your way of being. Find deep relaxation in this letting go of the ego, in the profound, if unsettling, freedom of seeing yourself as a pattern, a process that could perhaps continue in other forms, resting peacefully, floating calmly in the vast, mysterious, and deeply challenging space between identity and survival. The illusion of a unitary self. We have journeyed through the philosophical labyrinth of personal identity, exploring the self as a soul, a body, a memory, and a narrative. We have seen how each of these concepts, while compelling, ultimately seems to fall short of capturing the full, elusive nature of the I. Let us now turn to one of the most radical, profound, and, for many, most liberating perspectives on this mystery. We will explore the illusion of a unitary self, drawing on the convergent insights of ancient Buddhism and modern neuroscience. Both of these traditions, through very different methods, one through rigorous introspection, the other through empirical investigation, arrive at a startlingly similar conclusion, that the solid, stable, continuous, and independent self that we feel ourselves to be is not a fundamental entity, but a powerful and convincing illusion. The concept of no self, anatta in Pali, is a deep mind fuck that questions the very existence of the protagonist of our life story. The mystery is not, what is the self? But, why do we believe we have one? Contemplating this profound illusion is a direct path to a different kind of freedom and a state of deep, unshakable relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin with the insights from Buddhism, which has been investigating the nature of the self for over 2,500 years through the practice of meditation and introspective inquiry. The Buddha's core teaching of anatta or no self is not a nihilistic claim that you do not exist. You are clearly having an experience right now. Rather, it is a claim that there is no permanent, independent, and unchanging entity, no CO, or soul, at the center of our experience. When we look deeply inward, as David Hume did centuries later, we do not find a thinker behind the thoughts or a feeler behind the feelings. All we find is the ever-changing stream of experience itself. Buddhism analyzes our experience into what it calls the 5 aggregates or skandhas. 1. Form, our physical body. 2. Sensation, the raw data from our senses, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. 3. Perception, the cognitive process of recognizing and labeling sensations. 4. Mental formations, our thoughts, emotions, intentions, habits, and biases. And 5. Consciousness, the raw awareness in which the other 4 arise. The self, in this view, is a temporary, conventional label we apply to the dynamic, interdependent functioning of these 5 aggregates. It is like the word chariot, which is a name for a collection of parts, wheels, axle, frame, that are assembled in a particular way. There is no chariotness that exists independently of the parts. Similarly, there is no selfness that exists independently of the constantly changing flow of body, sensation, perception, thought, and awareness. Our suffering, the Buddha taught, arises from our ignorance of this truth, from our deep-seated, instinctual habit of clinging to this fleeting process as if it were a solid, permanent, and separate I. The path to liberation is to see through this illusion of a unitary self. Now, let us turn to the world of modern neuroscience. Using tools like fMRI, scientists can now peer into the living brain as it performs its incredible functions. And just like the Buddhist meditators and the philosopher Hume, when they look for a single, central self in the brain, they cannot find one. There is no command center, no Cartesian theater, where everything comes together for a single, conscious observer. Instead, they find a massively parallel, distributed system. The brain is a decentralized network of specialized modules, all operating simultaneously and in constant communication. The experience of seeing a red ball, as we've explored, involves different parts of the brain processing color, shape, and motion, all bound together in a way we still don't fully understand, the binding problem. The feeling of a unified I, a single narrator of our experience, is now believed by many neuroscientists to be an emergent property, a story constructed in large part by the brain's default mode network. This network, as we've discussed, is responsible for creating a coherent narrative of our lives, linking our past, present, and future. The self is the protagonist of this story. Neuroscientist Michael Gazzaniga, after his work with split-brain patients, called this the left brain interpreter. A module that is constantly trying to make sense of our actions and experiences, even if it has to invent reasons to create a coherent narrative. The self, from this perspective, is a useful fiction, a center of narrative gravity, as Dennett calls it, that helps the organism to organize its complex behavior and navigate its social world. It is a powerful and convincing illusion, but an illusion nonetheless. The mindfuck is the convergence of these two vastly different traditions, an ancient contemplative practice and modern empirical science, on the same radical conclusion. The solid, stable, you, that feels so real is a construction. For Buddhism, it's a construction of clinging and ignorance. For neuroscience, it's a construction of a complex, storytelling brain network. This profoundly questions the very foundation of our identity. If there is no permanent, unitary self, then who is it that is living this life? Who is it that is afraid of death? The answer, in both traditions, is that the question itself is based on a false premise. It is the process of living, the stream of experience that is happening. The idea of a separate I that has this experience is the illusion. The psychology mystery lies in the power and persistence of this illusion. Why are we so deeply and instinctively wired to believe in a unitary self? From an evolutionary perspective, a strong, coherent sense of self was likely a powerful adaptive tool. It helped to organize behavior, to plan for the future, and to navigate a complex social world where having a stable reputation and a sense of individual responsibility was crucial. The illusion of self is a highly successful piece of psychological software. The problem is that we mistake the user interface for the underlying hardware. What does it mean to live with the insight of no self? It does not mean becoming a passive, disconnected automaton. In fact, both Buddhist practitioners and some modern psychologists argue that seeing through the illusion of the ego can lead to a more profound, more compassionate, and more free way of living. When you are no longer rigidly identified with the small, anxious, and self-centered story of me, you can experience a greater sense of connection to the world and to others. Your circle of empathy can expand. You can act with greater spontaneity and creativity, freed from the constant need to protect and defend a fragile ego. The fear of personal annihilation, death, can be transformed when you realize that the self you are so afraid of losing is not a solid entity to begin with. As you continue to fall asleep, allow the feeling of your solid, stable self to gently soften. Acknowledge the powerful, intuitive feeling of being a single, continuous I, the protagonist of your life. Now, with a sense of gentle, open curiosity, contemplate the possibility that this is a beautiful and useful illusion. That beneath this single story you are a vast, dynamic, and ever-changing process. A fleeting collection of perceptions, a complex symphony of neural activity. You do not need to deny your sense of self, simply hold it more lightly. Find deep relaxation in letting go of the need to be a fixed, unchanging thing. Find peace in the idea of being a process, a flow, a dance of existence, resting calmly not as a solid I, but as the quiet, spacious awareness in which the entire, mysterious story of a life is unfolding. The extended mind hypothesis. Having just contemplated the radical idea that the self might be an illusion, a construction happening inside our brains, let us now explore an equally radical and mind-bending idea that pushes in the opposite direction. We will delve into the extended mind hypothesis. This philosophical argument, proposed by Andy Clark and David Chalmers, suggests that the mind is not something that is confined to the skull. They argue that certain tools and objects in our environment, a notebook, a smartphone, even the language we speak, can become so deeply integrated into our cognitive processes that they are not just tools for the mind, but are, in a very real sense, a part of the mind itself. This is a profound mind fuck that questions the very boundary between the self and the world, between the internal and the external. Where does your self end and the world begin? The extended mind hypothesis suggests that this boundary is not fixed, but is fluid, permeable, and can be extended to include parts of the world around us. This psychology mystery challenges our very notion of what and where you are, inviting deep relaxation through an expansive reimagining of your own identity as you fall asleep. To understand the argument, let's consider Clark and Chalmers' famous thought experiment. Imagine a man named Otto, who suffers from a form of Alzheimer's disease that impairs his memory. To navigate his life, Otto carries a notebook with him everywhere he goes. He is constantly writing down new information in the notebook and he relies on it completely. When he wants to go to the Museum of Modern Art, he doesn't consult his biological memory. He pulls out his notebook, looks up the address, and then goes on his way. Now, compare Otto with a healthy woman named Inga, who also wants to go to the museum. She pauses for a moment, recalls the address from her biological memory, and then sets off. The argument is that, for all functional purposes, Otto's notebook is playing the exact same role for him that Inga's biological memory is playing for her. The information in the notebook is 1. Constantly and easily accessible, 2. He automatically endorses its content, he trusts it, and 3. It was consciously stored there in the past. Clark and Chalmers argue that if Inga's act of recall is considered a cognitive process, then Otto's act of looking in his notebook should also be considered a cognitive process. The only difference is that Inga's memory is in her head, while Otto's is in his notebook. But why, they ask, should this arbitrary boundary of skin and skull be considered so metaphysically important? If an external object functions as a part of your mind, then perhaps it is a part of your mind. Otto's mind, in this view, is an extended system, a hybrid of his biological brain and his external notebook. This is a radical and powerful idea. It suggests that our minds are not confined to our brains, but can leak out into the world, coupling with external resources to form larger, integrated cognitive systems. The implications for our modern, technologically saturated lives are immense. Consider your smartphone. It holds a vast amount of your personal information, your contacts, your schedule, your memories in the form of photos, your access to the world's knowledge through search engines. You rely on it constantly and trust it implicitly. When you use your phone's GPS to navigate, is the phone just a tool, or is it, for that moment, an external part of your cognitive mapping and navigation system? When you use a search engine to answer a question, is the process of typing and reading fundamentally different from the process of searching your own biological memory? The extended mind hypothesis suggests that these devices are not just tools for the self, they are becoming extensions of the self. The mindfuck of this is its complete blurring of the boundary between me and not me. We have a powerful intuitive sense that our self ends at our skin. The extended mind hypothesis suggests that this is just a biological prejudice. Our true self, our cognitive self, can be a fluid and dynamic entity that expands and contracts, incorporating tools and technologies as needed. This questions our very sense of personal autonomy and identity. If my memories and beliefs are stored on a cloud server, and that server is part of my mind, what happens if that server is hacked or the company goes out of business? Does a part of my mind, a part of myself, cease to exist? This raises profound new questions about ownership, privacy, and the vulnerability of a technologically extended self. The psychology mystery here is where to draw the line. If a notebook can be part of the mind, what about the books in my library? What about the knowledge I get from a friend? What about the entire internet? If we extend the mind too far, does the concept of an individual self lose all meaning, dissolving into the entire socio-technical environment? Proponents of the hypothesis argue that for something to be part of the cognitive loop, it must be consistently and reliably accessible, automatically trusted, and easily available, just like our biological memory. A book on a library shelf that you have never read is not part of your mind. But your own well-worn and constantly consulted notebook arguably is. The debate continues about where to precisely draw this line, but the core idea, that the mind is not skull-bound, remains a powerful challenge. This concept also offers a new way to think about social cognition. When a long-married couple has been together for decades, they often develop a kind of shared mind. One partner might be the repository for all the family's social memories, while the other remembers all the financial details. Their individual biological memories have specialized, and they function as a single, coupled cognitive system. The memories of one partner are directly and reliably accessible to the other. In a very real sense, their minds have extended to include each other. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the boundaries of your own physical body. Feel where your skin meets the air, the traditional dividing line between you and the world. Now, with a sense of open, speculative curiosity, imagine that boundary becoming porous, permeable. Think of the information stored in your phone, the knowledge in the books you love, the memories shared with a close friend. Contemplate the radical possibility of the extended mind, the idea that these external resources are not just things you use, but are extensions of who you are. Let this idea gently dissolve your sense of being a small, isolated self, confined to your skull. Find deep relaxation in a more expansive, more connected, and more fluid sense of your own identity. A self that is not a static object, but a dynamic and ever-changing system, constantly coupling with the world around it. Resting peacefully, floating calmly in the vast, interconnected web of your own extended being. The development of self-concept in childhood. We have spent much of our journey tonight deconstructing the adult self, questioning its unity, its stability, and its very existence. Let us now travel back in time to the very beginning of our own personal story, to explore one of the most miraculous and mysterious processes in human development, the development of self-concept in childhood. We are not born with a sense of I. A newborn infant exists in a state of sensory fusion, unable to distinguish between its own body and the world, between its own feelings and those of its caregiver. The emergence of a stable, distinct, and continuous sense of self is not a given. It is a gradual, complex, and profound developmental achievement, a slow dawning of awareness over the first few years of life. This is the journey of learning you are an I. It is a psychology mystery that reveals how the self is not a static entity we are born with, but a dynamic structure that is built, piece by piece, through a delicate dance of neurological maturation, cognitive development, and social interaction. Contemplating our own journey into selfhood can be a source of profound wonder and deep relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin in the world of the infant. The infant's initial experience is likely what psychologist William James called a blooming, buzzing confusion, a stream of raw sensations without a clear subject or object. The first crucial step in the development of the self is the emergence of a physical or ecological self. This begins in the very first months of life, as the infant starts to discover its own body and its agency in the world. They learn, through trial and error, that they can make a mobile spin by kicking their legs, that their own hand feels different when they bite it compared to when they bite a blanket. They are learning the fundamental distinction between me and not me at a purely physical, perceptual level. This is the rudimentary sense of being a distinct physical entity that can act upon the world. The next major leap, typically occurring between 18 and 24 months of age, is the development of self-recognition. This is the moment famously tested by the mirror test, which we have explored in the context of the animal mind. When a dab of rouge is placed on a toddler's nose and they are placed in front of a mirror, they will initially react as if they are seeing another child. But at a certain point, a profound cognitive shift occurs. They will look at the reflection and then touch their own nose. This is a watershed moment. It is the first clear behavioral sign that the child has formed a mental representation of their own appearance and understands that the reflection is not another being, but an image of me. This marks the beginning of a conceptual self-concept. Once this capacity for self-recognition is in place, the development of the self accelerates, driven powerfully by the explosion of language. Around the same time, children begin to use personal pronouns like I, me, and mine. The word I is a profound and complex linguistic tool. It is a shifter, a word that means something different depending on who says it. For a child to use I correctly is to demonstrate a grasp of their own unique, subjective perspective. Language provides the child with a powerful new tool for organizing their experiences and for building a more complex sense of identity. They can now begin to describe their own internal states. I am hungry, I feel sad, and to tell simple stories about their own past experiences, the very first threads of a narrative self. This is also the period when the social self begins to blossom, and here we see the looking-glass self in action. The child's burgeoning self-concept is profoundly shaped by the reactions of others. Through the praise, the admonitions, and the emotional responses of their caregivers, they learn which parts of their self are good and lovable, and which are bad and unacceptable. They begin to internalize the standards and values of their family and culture, forming the foundations of their superego. They also develop a theory of mind, the understanding that other people have their own separate minds, their own beliefs and desires, which is a crucial step in being able to see themselves from an outside perspective and to manage their social reputation. As the child moves into the preschool and school years, the self-concept becomes more complex and differentiated. It moves from being based on concrete, observable characteristics, I have brown hair, I can run fast, to being based on more abstract, psychological traits, I am a kind person, I am good at math. Social comparison becomes a major force, as children begin to evaluate their own abilities and attributes by comparing themselves to their peers. Their sense of self is now deeply tied to their performance in school, their friendships, and their place within the social hierarchy of the playground. The mindfuck of contemplating this developmental journey is the realization that this fundamental I, this feeling of being a self that feels so innate and so solid, was not always there. It was built piece by piece over a period of years. You had to learn to be you. This questions the very idea of a pre-existing soul or an unchanging essence. It suggests that the self is an emergent property, a developmental achievement, a beautiful and complex construction. The mystery is how this process unfolds with such remarkable consistency across all human children. It is a testament to a shared, universal, biological and psychological blueprint for building a person. This perspective has profound implications. It highlights the incredible importance of the early childhood environment in shaping a healthy and secure sense of self. It reveals that our own adult identity, with all its strengths and insecurities, is built upon the foundations laid in these very first years of life, even if we have no explicit memory of them, due to childhood amnesia. The you that exists today is a direct continuation of that small child, learning to recognize themselves in a mirror, learning to say, I, for the first time. As you continue to fall asleep, let your mind drift back through the years, to the very beginning of your own story. Imagine the world from the perspective of an infant, a world of pure sensation without a clear you at its center. Picture the slow, miraculous dawn of self-awareness, the moment of recognition in the mirror, the first time you spoke the word I and claimed your own perspective. Acknowledge this journey of learning to be you as one of the most profound and mysterious processes of your own life. You were not born a self, you became one. Find deep relaxation in this sense of your own becoming. See your identity not as a static object, but as a living, growing, and ever-unfolding process. Resting peacefully, with a sense of profound wonder and compassion for the small child who began the incredible journey of becoming you. The impact of trauma on identity. We have just explored the beautiful and typically robust process by which a coherent self-concept is built during childhood. But what happens when this delicate process of construction is met with an overwhelming, terrifying, and deeply disruptive experience? Let us now, with great care and compassion, turn our attention to the profound and shattering impact of trauma on identity. A psychological trauma is an event or series of events, so stressful and threatening that it overwhelms an individual's capacity to cope. It can be a single incident like an accident, an assault, or a natural disaster, or it can be a chronic condition of abuse, neglect, or living in a war zone. Trauma is more than just a bad memory. It is a deep wound to the psyche that can fundamentally fracture and disorganize a person's sense of self, their relationship with their body, their trust in the world, and their very experience of time. The mystery of trauma is its power to shatter the coherence of the self, and the equal mystery is the human spirit's profound capacity to heal. This is a difficult contemplation, but it is essential for understanding the fragility of our identity and the profound resilience of the human mind, inviting deep relaxation through a compassionate understanding of this deep form of suffering as you fall asleep. To understand how trauma impacts identity, we must understand what it does to the brain and the memory system. Under normal conditions, our brain processes experiences and encodes them into a coherent autobiographical narrative. A memory has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it is integrated into the larger story of our life, located firmly in the past. A traumatic experience, however, is not processed in this way. The experience is so overwhelming that the brain's normal memory processing systems, particularly the hippocampus, which is responsible for creating coherent narratives, and the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for regulating emotion and putting things in context, can be temporarily hijacked or go offline. Instead, the more primitive, survival-oriented parts of the brain, like the amygdala, our fear center, take over. The traumatic experience is not encoded as a neat, linear story. It is encoded in a fragmented, sensory, and deeply embodied way, as intrusive images, visceral body sensations, overwhelming emotions, and disconnected sounds or smells. These memory fragments are not tagged as being in the past. They become trapped in the nervous system as a kind of timeless, present-moment reality. This is why a person with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, does not simply remember the trauma, they re-experience it. A trigger in the present, a loud noise, a certain smell, a particular tone of voice, can cause the unprocessed traumatic memory to intrude into their present awareness, making them feel as if the terrible event is happening all over again right now. This fragmentation of memory leads to a profound fracturing of the self. The continuity of the narrative self, the story that holds our identity together, is broken. The person's life is now divided into a before and an after. The trauma creates a chasm in their life story that can seem impossible to bridge. Their sense of a continuous, coherent I is shattered. They may experience profound dissociation, a feeling of being detached from their own body, their own emotions, or from reality itself. This is a desperate attempt by the psyche to distance itself from the unbearable pain of the traumatic experience. In its most extreme form, this can lead to the development of dissociative identity disorder, where the self fragments into multiple, distinct personality states. Trauma also fundamentally shatters our core beliefs about the world and our place in it. We all operate on a set of unconscious, foundational assumptions: that the world is a generally safe place, that it is meaningful, and that we ourselves are worthy and competent. Trauma can demolish these beliefs in an instant. The world can come to feel like a permanently dangerous and malevolent place. The self can come to feel fundamentally broken, tainted, or worthless. This can lead to profound and lasting feelings of shame, helplessness, and despair. The very foundation of one's identity and worldview is undermined. The mind-fuck of trauma is its power to turn our own mind and body against us. The very survival mechanisms that help us get through the traumatic event, the fight, flight, or freeze response, the dissociation, become the very things that trap us in the aftermath. The nervous system gets stuck in a state of high alert, constantly scanning for threat, even when the danger has passed. The body, which holds the implicit memory of the trauma, can feel like an alien and unsafe place. The past is not in the past, it is a living, breathing, and terrifying presence. But the story of trauma is not just a story of fragmentation. It is also a story of the profound human capacity to heal. The journey of healing from trauma is the difficult and courageous work of putting the shattered self back together. This is not about forgetting what happened. It is about transforming the memory. Modern, trauma-informed therapies such as EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, somatic experiencing, and trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy are all designed to help the individual to finally, safely process the traumatic memory. This process involves helping the brain to do the work it couldn't do at the time of the event. It involves allowing the fragmented sensory and emotional memories to be accessed in a safe and supportive context, and then helping the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus to come back online to do their job, to organize the fragments into a coherent narrative, to label the experience with words, and to place it firmly in the past. The goal is to transform the traumatic memory from a terrifying, present-moment re-experiencing into an ordinary, albeit painful, autobiographical memory, a story about something that happened back then, but is not happening now. This is a profound act of restoring the self, of mending the broken narrative. It involves grieving the losses, processing the rage and the fear, and slowly, painstakingly, rebuilding a sense of safety in the world and in one's own body. It is the heroic journey of reclaiming the disowned parts of the self and integrating the experience of the trauma into a new, more resilient, and often more compassionate identity. As you continue to fall asleep, allow your mind to hold this difficult topic with the utmost gentleness and compassion. Acknowledge the profound power of trauma to fracture the self, to shatter our sense of safety and coherence. Hold a space of deep, quiet respect for all those who have endured such experiences. Now, with the same compassion, contemplate the equally profound power of the human spirit to heal, to slowly, courageously piece the self back together, to integrate the darkness of the past into a new and often wiser story. Find deep relaxation in this testament to human resilience, in the knowledge that even the most shattered of selves can find their way back to a form of wholeness. Resting peacefully, with a sense of profound compassion for all the wounded and all the healers in our world. The future of the self. We have journeyed through the past of the self, from its origins in childhood to the wounds of trauma. Let us now cast our gaze forward, into the speculative and technologically driven future of the self. As we stand on the threshold of an era of advanced artificial intelligence and neuroscience, we are confronted with a possibility that was once the sole domain of science fiction: mind uploading. This is the hypothetical process of transferring a human mind from its biological brain to a digital substrate, a powerful computer. This would, in theory, grant us a form of digital immortality, freeing our consciousness from the frailties and finite lifespan of the physical body. But this tantalizing prospect raises some of the most profound and perplexing philosophical paradoxes about the very nature of the self. If we create a perfect digital copy of our mind, is it truly us? Or have we simply created a sophisticated echo while the original I perishes? The future of the self in a digital age is a deep mind fuck that questions the very meaning of survival and identity, inviting deep relaxation through contemplating the ultimate deconstruction of our biological being as you fall asleep. Let's first imagine the process itself. Mind uploading, or whole brain emulation, would likely involve a process of scanning a physical brain with incredible precision, capturing the state of every single one of its 86 billion neurons and its 100 trillion synaptic connections. This vast map of the connectome, along with all its neurochemical states, would then be used to create a perfect software model, a simulation of that brain which could then be run on a sufficiently powerful computer. This simulated mind would, in theory, wake up with all your memories, your personality, your quirks, your hopes, your fears. It would believe, with absolute certainty, that it is you, having experienced a seamless transition from a biological to a digital existence. The potential benefits of this are the stuff of utopian dreams. As a digital being, you could be free from disease, from aging, from physical pain. You could experience reality in ways we can't even imagine. You could inhabit a limitless variety of virtual worlds, the metaverse. You could travel across the cosmos at the speed of light as a pure information stream. You could back yourself up, preventing the risk of permanent death. You could even, perhaps, merge your consciousness with other uploaded minds or with powerful AIs, forming new kinds of collective intelligence. It is a vision of humanity transcending its biological limitations and achieving a kind of godlike, informational immortality. However, this vision is haunted by the deep philosophical paradox of copies, which we have touched upon before with Parfit's teleporter problem. Let's consider the crucial question: what happens to the original you? In one scenario, the scanning process is destructive. The biological brain is sliced and scanned, or otherwise destroyed in the process of creating the digital upload. In this case, a new conscious entity wakes up on the computer, an entity that is a perfect continuation of your psychological life. But did you survive the trip? Or did you simply die on the scanning table and a new digital person, a kind of mind twin, was created in your place, destined to carry on your life story without you? Our intuition screams that this is death and replacement. To make the problem clearer, consider the non-destructive scenario. The technology is so advanced that your brain can be scanned without harming it. You go into the scanner, the process is completed, and you walk out feeling exactly the same. But you are told that a perfect, conscious, digital copy of you is now also running on a computer. There are now two of you. You are still here in your biological body. So you clearly survived. But then what is the being in the computer? It must be a copy, a replica, however perfect. It is not you. Now comes the mind fuck. If the digital being is just a copy in the non-destructive case, why would we suddenly consider it to be the surviving you in the destructive case? The only difference is the fate of the original. This seems to lead to a terrifying conclusion. Mind uploading is not a path to immortality, but a very strange and high-tech way of creating a psychological heir while committing suicide. The original consciousness simply ceases. This forces us to confront the deepest questions about the nature of the self. What is the essential ingredient of your personal identity? Is it your physical substance, your specific, continuous brain? If so, then no upload, no matter how perfect, can ever be you. This is the body theory perspective. Or is your identity found in the pattern of your information, in the software of your mind, regardless of the hardware it runs on? This is the pattern identity theory. If you are just a pattern, then, in principle, that pattern can be copied and moved. But this leads to the paradox of duplication. We have a powerful, deeply ingrained intuition that our identity is singular and unique. We cannot be in two places at once. The idea that a copy of me is just as much me as I am is profoundly counterintuitive. Philosopher Derek Parfit, as we've seen, argued that this is where our intuitions fail us. He suggested that our obsession with identity is a mistake. What we should care about, what constitutes survival, is not the preservation of a single unique I, but the continuation of our psychological life, our memories, our character, our life's projects. In the non-destructive uploading case, you have survived twice over. In the destructive case, you have survived in the only way that matters as your psychological stream continues. From this perspective, the fear of the original's death is an irrational, emotional attachment to a specific clump of atoms. As you continue to fall asleep, let your mind hold this strange, futuristic vision. The possibility of your consciousness being translated into pure information, of yourself being uploaded to a digital heaven. Contemplate the profound paradox of the copy. If a perfect replica of you were created, would it be you? Did you survive? Feel the intuitive resistance to this idea. The deep, primal attachment to your own single, continuous stream of being. Now, with a sense of speculative curiosity, entertain Parfit's radical idea that what matters is not the I, but the continuation of the story, the pattern, the psychological life. Let this thought gently dissolve your rigid sense of a singular, indivisible self. Find deep relaxation in the profound mystery of what survival truly means, resting peacefully, floating calmly in a future where the boundaries of the self have become as fluid and as transferable as a stream of digital data. The feeling of ownership. We have journeyed through the great philosophical theories and paradoxes of the self. Let us now turn our attention to a mystery that is more immediate, more intimate, and in some ways even more fundamental. It is the simple yet profound feeling of ownership. When a thought appears in your mind, you experience it as your thought. When you decide to move your hand, you experience it as your action. This basic background sense that I am the owner of my mental states and the author of my physical actions is a cornerstone of our sense of a unified agentive self. It feels utterly self-evident. But why? What is the neurological and psychological mechanism that creates this powerful feeling of mineness? What distinguishes a thought that feels like mine from a voice that feels like an auditory hallucination, or an action that feels voluntary from a muscle spasm that feels involuntary? The mystery of this feeling of ownership is a deep secret of the self, a mind fuck that questions the very source of our agency and reveals that our sense of I is an active and sometimes fragile construction of the brain. Contemplating this fundamental feeling can be a source of profound, grounding relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin by appreciating how fundamental this feeling is. You do not have to consciously decide that a thought is yours. The ownership is simply part of the experience of the thought itself. You don't just experience thinking, you experience I am thinking. You don't just experience doing, you experience I am doing. This is the basic sense of agency for actions, and ownership for thoughts and bodily sensations. It is the glue that binds the contents of our consciousness to a central, subjective pole, the I. Without this, our mental life would be a chaotic, ownerless stream of perceptions, a blooming, buzzing confusion without a center. Neuroscience has begun to uncover the intricate brain processes that likely generate this feeling. It appears to be a result of a complex process of predictive coding, a concept we have explored in other contexts. When your brain decides to initiate an action, say to lift your hand, the motor cortex sends out two sets of signals simultaneously. One set goes down to the spinal cord to actually move the muscles of your arm. The other, a copy of the motor command called an efference copy, is sent to sensory areas of the brain, like the parietal cortex. This efference copy is a prediction of the sensory feedback the brain expects to receive as a result of the movement. When the arm moves, sensory signals from the muscles, joints, and skin travel back up to the brain. The brain then compares this incoming sensory feedback with the prediction generated by the efference copy. If the feedback perfectly matches the prediction, the brain experiences a match. It is this successful match between the predicted sensory consequences of an action and the actual sensory consequences that is thought to generate the feeling of agency. The brain essentially concludes, the sensory feedback I received is precisely what I predicted would happen from my own command, therefore, I must have caused this action. The feeling of minus is the feeling of a successful self-prediction. This model explains why we are so good at distinguishing our own actions from those caused by the external world. If someone else takes your hand and moves it, there was no prior motor command, no efference copy generated by your brain. The sensory feedback arrives as a surprise to the predictive system, and it is therefore experienced as passive and external, an action that is happening to you, not by you. This is also why you cannot tickle yourself. When your own fingers move to tickle your side, your brain sends out an efference copy that perfectly predicts the exact timing and location of the tactile sensation. Because the sensation is perfectly predicted, the sensory signal is attenuated or dampened, and it doesn't feel ticklish. It is only the unpredicted touch of another that can create that surprising, ticklish sensation. The mindfuck of this is the realization that our deep, intuitive feeling of being the author of our actions is not a direct perception of some metaphysical will, but is a post hoc inference, a conclusion drawn by the brain based on a comparison of predicted and actual sensory data. It is a brilliant and highly reliable trick the brain uses to create a sense of a coherent agent of self. The I, that acts as a construction of this predictive process. This becomes chillingly clear when the system breaks down. In certain neurological and psychiatric conditions like schizophrenia, this predictive mechanism can be impaired. An individual might generate a thought, which is a form of internal action, but their brain fails to generate the proper predictive signal, tagging it as self-generated. The thought then arrives in their conscious awareness without the usual feeling of ownership. It feels alien, intrusive, like it was inserted into their mind from an outside source. This is the terrifying experience of thought insertion. Similarly, they might perform an action, but a failure in the predictive matching process leads them to feel that they did not initiate it, that an external force is controlling their body. This is the experience of delusions of control. These tragic conditions are a form of reverse mystery, a breakdown that reveals the crucial, silent work our brains are constantly doing to create the seamless feeling of ownership that we take for granted. The same principle applies to the ownership of thoughts. The subtle feeling that a thought is mine is likely the result of a similar predictive process, where the generation of a thought is accompanied by an unconscious tag that says, "This came from inside." When this tagging process fails, as in a hallucination of a voice, the internal event is misinterpreted as an external one. The psychology mystery lies in the sheer perfection and seamlessness of this process. In every waking moment, your brain is performing trillions of these predictions and comparisons, effortlessly weaving together your intentions, actions, and perceptions into the coherent experience of being an embodied agent in the world. It is the invisible, high-speed computation that creates the very fabric of your subjective reality. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the feeling of your own body. Feel the subtle intention to take your next breath, and feel the gentle sensation of the breath as it happens. Contemplate the profound, silent mystery occurring in that simple act. The brain's prediction, the body's action, the sensory feedback, and the seamless creation of the feeling, "I am breathing." Acknowledge the incredible intelligence of your own nervous system, its constant, tireless work of creating your sense of agency, your feeling of ownership. Let go of the need to be a simple, metaphysical commander, of your body and mind. Find deep relaxation in the more complex and beautiful truth that your I is an emergent harmony, a perfect resonance between intention and result, a story told by your predictive brain, resting peacefully, feeling yourself as a whole, integrated, and miraculously self-perceiving being. The self as a center of narrative gravity, Dennett. We have journeyed through the unsettling voids of Hume's bundle theory and the profound unity of Buddhist no-self. We have seen how neuroscience searches in vain for a single central I in the brain. Let us now explore a powerful and elegant modern philosophical theory that attempts to synthesize these ideas, a theory that acknowledges the illusory nature of the self while also explaining its undeniable power and necessity. We will delve into Daniel Dennett's concept of the self as a center of narrative gravity. In this view, the self, the I, that you feel you are, is not a real physical entity, not a thing in your brain or a soul in your body. Instead, it is a kind of abstract object, a theoretical posit, a useful fiction that our brain creates, much like a physicist creates the concept of a center of gravity to make calculations about a complex object easier. The mindfuck of this idea is its suggestion that your I has the same level of reality as a fictional character, a protagonist in the story your brain tells about your life. This questions the very substance of our identity, reframing it as a brilliant piece of cognitive software, a virtual self, that allows a complex organism to navigate a complex world. Let's begin by understanding the analogy of the center of gravity. A physical object like a chair is made of billions of individual atoms. To calculate how the chair will move or balance, a physicist doesn't need to track every single atom. Instead, they can calculate a single, abstract point, its center of gravity, and treat the object as if all its mass were concentrated at that point. Does this center of gravity physically exist? No. You cannot open up the chair and find a special, heavy point. It is a mathematical abstraction, a wonderfully useful fiction that allows for incredibly accurate predictions. Dennett argues that the self is the brain's equivalent of a center of gravity. Your brain and body are a massively complex system of trillions of cells, all interacting in ways that are far too complicated to track individually. To make sense of its own behavior, to plan for the future, and especially to communicate its intentions to others, the brain creates a simplified, abstract, and unifying concept, the I. This center of narrative gravity is the fictional point from which all of your biographical stories seem to emanate. Your past experiences, your future plans, your beliefs, your desires, they are all organized and attributed to this single, convenient, and coherent narrative agent. In this view, the question, where is the self, is a category error. It's like asking, where is the center of gravity in the chair? It's not in the chair in a literal sense. It's a property of the chair as a whole. Similarly, the self is not in the brain. It is a property of the brain's incredibly complex activity, an abstract point that is the focus of the narrative the brain is constantly spinning about itself. This theory elegantly synthesizes many of the ideas we have been exploring. It aligns with Hume and Buddhism in asserting that when you look inside, you find no thing, that is the self, only a stream of perceptions and thoughts. It aligns with neuroscience, which finds no central command center, but a distributed network of processes. The split brain data is explained beautifully. When you cut the brain in half, you disrupt the ability of the system to create a single, unified narrative, which can result in the emergence of two separate centers of narrative gravity, two selves. It also aligns with the narrative theory of self, but it gives it a more specific, functional grounding. The self is the story, but the reason we tell the story is to create this useful, simplifying abstraction. The mindfuck of this concept is its profound reframing of what it means to be a person. It suggests that your I, the most intimate and real thing you know, has the same ontological status as a fictional character or a mathematical abstraction. You are the hero of a novel your brain is writing about itself. This doesn't mean you are not real in the everyday sense. Your body is real, your thoughts are real brain events. But the unified I that you feel you are is a part of the user interface, not the underlying hardware. It is a brilliant piece of virtual software that the brain has evolved to run on its parallel hardware, creating the powerful illusion of a single conscious agent in charge. This psychology mystery forces us to question our own inner architecture. Why do we need this useful fiction? Dennett argues it is essential for social life. To be a moral agent, to make promises, to be held responsible for our actions, we need to have a stable, continuous identity over time. The narrative self provides this. It allows us to say, I will meet you tomorrow, and for others to trust that the I that shows up will be the same one that made the promise. It is the basis of our social contract. We have to invent ourselves as unified agents in order to function as social beings. As you continue to fall asleep, allow your mind to gently play with this radical idea. Picture your own complex being, your body and brain, a vast and intricate system. Now, imagine a single shimmering point of light hovering in the center of it all. This is your center of narrative gravity, It is not a real thing but an abstract point around which the entire story of your life gracefully orbits. Acknowledge that this useful fiction is the most important creation of your own brain, the protagonist of your own unique story. Let go of the need for yourself to be a solid, substantial thing. Find deep relaxation in the elegant and strangely liberating idea that you are a story, a pattern, a beautiful abstraction. This doesn't make you less real, it makes you a work of art, a narrative masterpiece created by the most complex thing in the universe, your own brain, resting peacefully, the main character in the beautiful, unfolding, and mysterious story of your own life. The loss of self in mystical and flow states. Throughout our long journey tonight, we have relentlessly questioned, deconstructed, and probed the nature of the self. We have seen it as a soul, a body, a memory, a story, a useful fiction. All these explorations have been attempts by the thinking mind to understand itself. Let us now turn to a different kind of evidence, a more direct and profound experience that offers a glimpse of what lies beyond the ordinary narrative I. We will explore the loss of self in mystical and flow states, the profound human experience of egolessness. These are the moments of deep meditation, of being in the zone, during a creative or athletic endeavor, of being overwhelmed by the beauty of nature, where the constant, chattering inner monologue of the self seems to fall silent, and the rigid boundary between me and the world becomes porous or dissolves entirely. These peak experiences are a profound psychology mystery, a mind fuck that questions the very necessity of our egoic identity. They provide a powerful experiential confirmation of the illusion of the self, suggesting that our true nature might be something far more spacious and interconnected than we normally believe. Contemplating these moments of self-transcendence can be a direct path to deep relaxation and a profound sense of peace as you fall asleep. Let's first consider the flow state, a concept we have explored in other contexts. As psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi described, flow is a state of optimal experience, of being completely and effortlessly absorbed in a challenging task. When a musician is lost in an improvisation, a rock climber is focused on their next move, or a writer is in the midst of a creative torrent, they often report a profound loss of self-consciousness. The inner critic, the voice that is constantly monitoring and judging our performance, goes quiet. The sense of a separate I, who is doing the activity, disappears, and there is only the doing itself. The musician becomes the music, the climber becomes the climb. This is a state of egolessness. In these moments, our performance is often at its peak, precisely because the anxious, second-guessing ego has gotten out of the way, allowing our more deeply ingrained, unconscious skills to operate with fluid perfection. The experience is not one of losing control, but of a higher, more effortless form of control. Now, let's turn to the even more profound experiences of mystical or transcendent states. These have been described for millennia by mystics, saints, and sages in all of the world's contemplative traditions, and are also reported by people in deep meditation, during profound encounters with art or nature, or sometimes spontaneously. While the specific interpretations vary across cultures, the core phenomenological description is remarkably consistent. These experiences often involve a sense of timelessness, where the linear progression of past, present, and future dissolves into an eternal now. They involve a feeling of ineffability, the sense that the experience is beyond words and concepts. And most crucially for our exploration, they almost always involve a profound dissolution of the self, a loss of the ego. In this state, the fundamental distinction between subject and object, between me and the world, collapses. The feeling of being a separate individual, I looking out at an external world, melts away, and is replaced by a sense of profound unity, of oneness with everything. The mystic does not feel that they are looking at the universe, they feel that they are the universe experiencing itself. This is the experience of non-duality, of cosmic consciousness, of oceanic feeling. It is a direct, experiential refutation of our everyday sense of being an isolated, skin-encapsulated ego. What is happening in the brain during these states of egolessness? Modern neuroscience is beginning to provide some fascinating clues. As we've seen, our sense of a stable narrative self is strongly linked to the activity of the default mode network, DMN. This network is active when we are engaged in self-referential thought, thinking about our past, worrying about our future, ruminating about ourselves. Remarkably, studies of the brains of experienced meditators, as well as individuals under the influence of psychedelic substances, which are known to reliably occasion mystical-type experiences, show a significant decrease in the activity and connectivity of the default mode network. It's as if the neurological engine of the self, the inner narrator, is temporarily turned down or taken offline. As the DMN quiets down, the rigid boundaries of the self that it helps to construct seem to dissolve, allowing for a more direct, unfiltered, and unified mode of perception to emerge. The mindfuck of these experiences is their profound challenge to our hierarchy of values. We spend most of our lives trying to build up, protect, and enhance our egos, our sense of self. We believe our I is our most precious possession. Yet, these peak experiences, which are often described as the most meaningful, blissful, and insightful moments of people's lives, are characterized by the very loss of this cherished self. This questions the very goal of our ordinary existence. It suggests that what we are so busy defending might be the very thing that stands in the way of a deeper, more profound experience of reality. The paradox is that the ultimate fulfillment might lie not in self-aggrandizement, but in self-transcendence. This provides a powerful, experiential confirmation of the philosophical and psychological theories that point to the illusion of the self. The ideas of Hume's bundle theory or the Buddhist concept of no self are no longer just abstract, intellectual arguments. The mystical experience is the direct, felt realization of their truth. In that state, you see that you are not a thing but a process. You feel that you are not separate from the universe but an expression of it. This psychology mystery does not mean that the ego or the self is bad. The ego is an absolutely essential tool for navigating the everyday world. We need a stable sense of self to make plans, to form relationships, and to function in society. The insight from these states is not that we should destroy the ego, but that we should not be imprisoned by it. The ego is a useful tool, but it is not the totality of who we are. There is a deeper, more spacious level of our being that we can learn to access. As you continue to fall asleep, allow your own sense of a separate, defined self to begin to soften. Imagine the boundaries of your body gently blurring. Imagine the inner narrator, the constant stream of I, me, mine, slowly growing quieter and quieter. You do not need to force this. Simply hold the intention of letting go. Contemplate the possibility of an awareness that is vaster, more open, and more connected than your ordinary ego. An awareness that is unified with the gentle rhythm of your breath, with the silence of the room, with the vastness of the night sky. Find deep relaxation in this gentle loss of self, in the peaceful surrender of the small, anxious ego to the vast, quiet, and interconnected nature of existence itself, resting peacefully, not as a separate I, but as a seamless, integral part of the great, mysterious, and unified web of being. Finding peace in the elusive self. Our long journey into the nature of the self is now drawing to its final, quiet conclusion. We have journeyed through the great philosophical theories, from the immortal soul to the biological body. We have wrestled with the profound paradoxes of change and identity, epitomized by the ship of Theseus. We have seen the self as a stream of consciousness held together by a fragile and malleable memory. We have confronted the radical idea of the self as a bundle of perceptions, a narrative, or a useful fiction. We have explored its neurological underpinnings, its fragmentation in split-brain patients, and its dissolution in mystical states. We are left not with a simple answer to the question, what am I? But with a profound and beautiful mystery. The self is not a solid object to be found, but an elusive, multifaceted, and dynamic process. So, where do we find our footing? How do we live with this profound uncertainty at the very core of our being? Our final exploration is a synthesis, a contemplative conclusion on how to find peace in the elusive self. The first step towards finding peace is the act of letting go of the need for a single, definitive answer. Our rational, conscious ego craves certainty. It wants to know what it is. It wants to have a solid, stable, and permanent identity. Our journey tonight has shown that this certainty is likely an illusion. The self is not a simple noun, it is a complex verb. It is a process of being, of becoming, of remembering, of relating, of storytelling. To insist on a single, simple definition, I am my soul, I am my body, I am my memories, is to grasp at one facet of a multifaceted diamond while ignoring all the others. Deep relaxation begins when we stop the frantic search for a final answer and instead learn to rest in the richness and the ambiguity of the question itself. The second step is to embrace a more fluid and compassionate view of our own identity. If the self is not a fixed, unchanging entity, then we are not trapped by our past. The narrative theory of self is particularly empowering here. If we are the authors of our own story, then we have the power to reinterpret past events, to choose which themes we emphasize, and to write a different future chapter. The malleability of memory, which can seem like a frightening flaw, can also be seen as a gift of grace, allowing us to soften the edges of past traumas and to reframe our history in a more empowering light. Finding peace in the elusive self means accepting that we are not a finished product, but a work in progress, a story that is still being written. This allows for the possibility of growth, of change, and of healing. It frees us from the tyranny of a fixed and often self-critical self-concept. The third step is to find a balance between our individual and our relational nature. The insights of the looking glass self and the deep connections revealed by empathy show us that we do not exist in a vacuum. We are profoundly shaped by our connections to others. At the same time, the experience of authenticity and the wisdom of contemplative traditions point to a deep, inner core of experience that is uniquely ours. Peace is found not in choosing between an isolated, individual self and a completely socially determined self, but in holding the tension between the two. We are both independent and interdependent. We are both unique individuals and nodes in a vast social web. A healthy self is one that can move gracefully between solitude and connection, between authentic self-expression and compassionate attunement to others. The fourth, and perhaps most profound, step is to learn to disidentify from the contents of our consciousness, to recognize the illusion of the unitary self. The insights from Hume, from Buddhism, from neuroscience, and from the experience of egolessness all point to the same liberating truth. You are not your thoughts, you are not your feelings, you are not your body. You are the awareness in which all of these things appear. This is the ultimate mind fuck and the ultimate liberation. The I, that we so fiercely defend, the ego with all its anxieties and ambitions, is a temporary pattern, a story, a process. To find the deepest peace is to learn to rest in the silent, spacious awareness that lies behind this process. This does not mean we become passive or disengaged. It means we can engage with life more fully, more playfully, more compassionately, because we are no longer confusing our true nature with the transient character of our personal story. This is the ultimate secret of the self. The more you grasp for it, the more it eludes you. The more you try to define it, the more it reveals its paradoxical nature. The peace comes when you finally stop searching and simply rest in the mystery. The self is not an answer to be found, but a question to be lived. As our journey together tonight comes to its final, quiet end, allow all the theories, all the paradoxes, all the ideas to gently dissolve. The soul, the body, the memory, the narrative, the bundle. Let them all go, and simply rest in the direct, immediate, and undeniable experience of being, right here, right now. This awareness, this simple, silent presence, is the ultimate ground of your existence. It needs no definition. It requires no justification. It is the final and most profound relaxation. Find peace in this elusive self, this beautiful, transient, and mysterious process that is your life, resting deeply, not as someone who has solved the mystery of I, but as the mystery itself, quietly and peacefully aware.